Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of By the Numbers. I'm your host, Richard Lewis, and joining me, as he always does, is Duncan Thorin Shields, the eSports historian. But also joining us, we have a special guest in the form of Montecristo. You probably know him from League of Legends. Obviously, he's over at Flashpoint as well, CSGO relevant, and both of them are currently in their coronavirus compound quarantine.
Bunkers.
So this is why I was able to get them both on the show. Like, Duncan's been thinking
Literally
about quitting for a
nothing
while.
better to do.
Montecristo's bored out of his fucking mind. So I said, well, why don't we do this then? How both of you guys doing? Was the journey smooth? You're not too...
There was nobody on my plane. It was great.
Yeah, dude, I saw it. There was another player tweeted something like that out. It might have been Floppy, actually, at Cloud9. But I saw a tweet anyway. So it was like literally an empty plane.
Yeah, there were two other people in my cabin. I had like 10 rows to myself.
It's nice though, right? I mean, shit, like you ain't gonna complain about that.
No, I'm not. It was really pleasant actually. So one of the best international flights I've ever had, for sure.
I'll balance it out then, right? So obviously, with where I live, I purposely moved there to have Schiphol so close, like easy access, like you know how long it takes to get through. Well, I made the mistake, right, of Googling, like, is the food still open inside Schiphol? And all the websites were like, yes, most shops steering open. So I was like, oh, sound. So I went there, right? So I was going to have my dinner before I went in. First of all, right, they just banned all seating areas. So you can go to the Burger King. There's only like two things open, like Burger King and something else. You can go to the Burger King, you just can't sit down and eat it. So it's like, sound, well, that's already brilliant. I'd obviously want to be walking, eating a burger. And then secondly, you know, when you go, one thing I've never understood about those things is, why is the price the same for the burger that was cooked just now, that's awesome, or the one that was just slightly like been there for 5 minutes? There should be like a fucking timer where I get a discount. Because when I tried eating the burger, it was lukewarm. And you know what? I'm like, Jesus, I spit out lukewarm water. It's fucking disgusting. Be freezing cold or be red hot. That's the only way I'm like Jesus.
Yeah. Good. It wouldn't be an episode of By the Numbers if you didn't compare yourself to Jesus,
you verbally whip people sometimes, especially corrupt money lenders. So I think there's some other Christ-like comparisons.
Well, TSM would be some sort of Pharisee-type characters, of course, yeah.
Defiling the temple of eSports.
Yeah. Can you stop encouraging him, mate? He's bad enough to work with as it is. Like, you know, he's definitely like fucking Jesus. He goes away, you think he's dead, he turns up. That's what he does for this show. No work, no contribution on the topics. Just fucking, here he is. The Lord hath come. Anyway, yeah, so shout out to the sponsors. Obviously, that sponsor the podcast. .com, you know about those guys by now. That's Beep with 9 E's if you're watching on YouTube. You can go and create an account there using .com/RLS. Show them that we sent you. Support the show, support the channel, support the content. And of course now NordVPN, because I'm all RezChi 2 sponsors. You can go to nordvpn.com/RLS, get 70% off a VPN. Strongly recommend you have one, especially as we approach end times with the American political landscape. They'll be coming for you in 7 days, guys.
Here's a fun thing you can use VPN for, by the way. If you're American and you like the NFL like me, but the NFL won't sell you the streaming package, I just VPN to other countries, buy the entire season, and then just watch it through the VPN. It's fucking amazing. And it's way cheaper.
I always forget
I don't know if it's legal or not, so I can't necessarily endorse what Christopher said, but you know, if it is legal, how about it? If it ain't,
you're paying the NFL money. That's all I'm saying. You are paying the NFL.
No, that is how mad the world is. I actually forgot about that. So wait a minute. When I just buy the season pass, I have a better fucking experience than you do living in the country where it is.
Yes.
That makes a lot of sense. There was a thing with that Last Dance documentary. I kept telling him, like, you've got to watch this. He's like, well, I didn't see it. It's like, well, it's on Netflix. No, it isn't in America. Like, sound. Say that, mate.
to put it how crazy it was, actually, when I was living in Vegas, it was so hard to get Raiders games. Like you would have to sign up here. They would be on a different channel one week and another. You know, you're having to go around all these providers to get the games. Since I've been back in the UK, I just haven't missed a single fucking game, have I?
Exactly.
I've just got NFL Game Pass and I just watch it live.
Yep. So all I'm saying is NFL Game Pass is totally awesome, and VPNs help me watch it. So there you go. Yeah. There's your pitch, Richard.
Well, yes, that was also the mad thing, because when I had Game Pass in the US, I was like, I still can't watch it. I still can't watch the Raiders games. Fuck, I had to watch VODs all the time. Nightmare. Anyway, enough illegal activity. Let's talk about Flashpoint activity, because it seems silly. You know, we get both.
Which I'll clarify, not at all illegal. Nothing illegal involved.
Nothing illegal.
And you can watch it from whatever country you want live on twitch.tv or youtube.com. We're unlike the NFL, for free.
One of the few esports leagues where there's no illegal activity, probably. But yeah. So look, there was a topic that came up a few episodes ago where Duncan was talking about, you know, Valve and kind of, you know, how their late cancellation of the major kind of fucked over more of the plans that Flashpoint had. And obviously with you here now, you know, because if I just ask Duncan, people will say, well, that's just Duncan being biased. But I thought, you know, if I bring you both in on this, what exactly happened there? Because it's a story that I don't think's been told in the community yet.
So the major was scheduled for the window that Flashpoint is in, basically, that it is going to be in now. And so we were planning on running it a little bit later on. What happened is that when the major was canceled, ESL moved a bunch of their events into the major window and then created the new LAN event when we were supposed to hold our event.
I think it was the Beijing event.
Yeah, it was supposed to be an online event. So they created their own LAN at the end of the year, and we were trying to get there for LAN at the same time. So it made sense for us to move it up, basically. But it was really hard to schedule because the other thing is, like, we can't really schedule against RMR events for the fictional major that may or may not occur within the next year, right? I think personally, my personal belief is maybe we should stop running RMR events when we don't have a hard date for the major, because we're in an uncontrollable global pandemic and we don't know when national governments are going to allow people to congregate in order to have the kind of major that we'd all like to see, right?
Yeah.
So I think we should stop doing that because it disrupts a lot of these other events that people could hold online right now, and it's kind of like fracturing up the scene too, because you have like the CIS RMRs and the NA RMRs and the EU RMRs. And so if you're trying to have an event, even if all the teams are in Europe, they could be competing in all these different RMR events, right? We ran into that with our qualifiers where we had like the CIS RMR during the Flashpoint closed qualifiers, where we were trying to schedule the Russian teams. And especially since we had Forza and Virtus.pro actually qualify, so we have two Russian teams that were competing simultaneously in the CIS RMR. It was quite difficult.
Yeah, it's really weird. I don't understand. I'm kind of like you. When I said that it's a good thing, you know, that they're going to try and, you know, do a reset for the rankings for the next major. Like, sure, it's a good thing. I don't want the people who qualified now to sort of just get a free pass a year from now when they might be utterly dog shit. It wouldn't make any sense. But I didn't realize that was going to mean, yeah, we'll go straight into, you know, regional major ranking events almost immediately. And by the way, because they're regional major ranking events, tournament organizers can basically use them like some sort of fucking gulag experiment where players just play non-stop online for fucking, you know, 5 weeks, and like people are turning around and going, oh yeah, but look, they get regional major ranking points for fucking what?
Yeah,
for what? If we don't have a major within a year, it's all bollocks.
Take that, and then also remember that Valve doles out who has RMR status, right? So they're effectively playing Kingmaker with the calendar at the same time, because teams will prioritize the RMR events. So anytime there's an RMR event, you could just schedule on top of whatever you want, and then all the teams will go there, and it becomes impossible to run another event, even with a very significant $1 million prize pool like Flashpoint.
I think how gross this is, right? So obviously the context is 2 days ago, we had an RMR event end, the one that Heroic just won over Vitality, obviously like epic final and stuff, right? That tournament, their first place prize was $33,000. And there was some stat, like, because they went in the lower bracket, they played something mental, like 37 maps or something in a fucking week. Now, this is so egregious because, right, when people called them out for this, MTG as a company, good old Flying DJ, I already made my feelings clear about that name before, but I'm going to keep saying it rather than your German name because you stupidly have that as your Twitter name. So good old Flying DJ, fucking Flat Eric himself, he just popped on, whatever. And then basically he tried to do the classic move, which is another thing I despise about ESL. ESL are the industry leaders. They are the ones who set the standards of how LANs work, but they love to fall back to like, it was Valve making us do it that way, wasn't it? We don't have any control. Meanwhile, you find out all the time. Like, if you don't know what makes ESL different from the other TOs, is other TOs like Flashpoint, Blast, go to Valve and say, I'm thinking of doing this. Can I do it? ESL just does it. And then if Valve gets wind of it, maybe then Valve has a conversation with them. Like, otherwise, they're just like, fuck it until they stop us. What are they going to do? Because they control most of the calendar. They know that, listen, of all the TOs, Valve isn't going to come in and say, right, ESL, you're kicked out of all events because it would cripple the infrastructure. So what I'm going to get to the point of is this. They were trying to imply, like, yeah, but the reason it's only 33,000 for first is because, you know, it's just like a dream hack and it's an RMR. And, you know, Valve actually decided that you had to play all those games like the 9th place and the 10th place and the 11th place and the 12th place. And this is the maddest thing, though. This context is fucking insane, right? Because that would be fine, Richard, if the only person in the world who could run an RMR was DreamHack, right? Yep. By the way, a small tier 2 organizer. This is the detail people don't know. Oh, we also applied to do an RMR early in the year. So our RMR would have been the Flashpoint prize pool of $1 million. And it wouldn't have just been Flashpoint teams. It would have just been a normal RMR. It would have had the Flashpoint teams and whatever teams qualified. So essentially, Valve said, nah, I don't want your $1 million, mate. Let's just have DreamHack work these motherfuckers to the bone, playing 37 maps for what would be like, what would that even be in Flashpoint? In 9th place or something. Like, at that point in time, not only is it very cynical, as you're saying, to just keep running the RMRs, even though there is no end in sight right now for when we'll be able to run a major. Very cynical. Because, by the way, that means ESL and MTG get to go, oh, shit, do we have to reset again? Well, wipe the decks clean and do a third set of RMR. Like, that'll be ridiculous at that point in time. Secondly, they do this shit.
Almost certainly going to happen, by the way.
Yeah, they do a shit RMR that works you to the bone. Now, I'm not saying you wouldn't play 37 maps in Flashpoint, but you get 500k if you do it. So I think 500k versus 33k, I think people can see why you might be willing to play more maps for that. So if you just look at this whole scenario, technically, it's not just MTG doing it. They've been allowed to do it at every step by Valve because Valve just is absent. They just don't get, once they've given you it, they just sort of say, you take care of it. And then it seems like there's no way to petition them to play. And so I don't know. And the reason why this tilts me, mate, is because it'd be one thing if it was like, right, we're not going to give Flashpoint an RMR because you're not proven. You've already done one event. I mean, you can ignore the fact that you've got Face It and ESCS. But okay, let's pretend it's just Flashpoint. You've done one event. Why see a Summit getting an RMR then? That's a funsy event that's done a few from a fucking house on couches where it's like it was always tier 2 teams. And what is this shit like? What they're super established now, are they? Like, that's what I mean. There's no rhyme or reason to it, Richard. So, like, when you go into this scenario, how are you supposed to plan your business? Like, I get that everyone's under difficult circumstances because of the pandemic, but this is just making it harder for everyone.
Yeah, and to be clear about this is when we were still planning to have Flashpoint in September. So this was before the major cancellation, and it would have been an RMR before the major window that occurred. So this was a while ago now. But yeah, I mean, we did ask for an RMR event, and we were thinking about the possibility of running Flashpoint 2 as an RMR.
So it's not like we're trying to say, by the way, like, get all this stuff out of our way for our term. No, we were even willing to essentially abandon the premise of Flashpoint for one tournament and just facilitate the community. And as I say, the prize money would have been magnitudes higher than anyone else can offer. Because there's another thing, right? Everyone loves to go on and on about ESL. Well, it's not their fault they have to divide it up into the regions. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's not even true. They don't have to divide it into CIS and EU. That's mad cynical. Like, that's not, when was that ever even the case? In fact, Na'Vi right now would probably fucking beg you to not make it a CIS division. Like, they can't fucking get a win in those divisions, mate. So, like, I think a lot of those things, what I don't like about it is just cop to it. Like, if you choose to do something your way and you choose to offer this much prize money, you're allowed to. That's fine. You don't have to lie about it as well, which, I mean, I realize that's just a broken record at this time because everyone in eSports is like, I don't have to, but I'm going to choose to. Like, oh, well, you win.
Yeah. So, look, I'll ask as well, though, you know, it seems really weird because you guys were the league that had, it seemed initially a good relationship with the CSPPA. And the CSPPA has been
right before that bill came, you know.
yeah, as is often the way, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. But you know, it seemed that you guys had like a really good kind of you know, rapport with CSPPA, and the amount of money that you were talking about, you know, like you say, sure, play 37 maps for $500,000, 37 maps for 33,000. not as appealing. And the CSPPA have been talking a lot about, burnout and why we shouldn't have tournaments that never end and how certain formats would need to be rejected. Now we're immediately, literally they just made a statement. We analyzed it on the last episode and then we just go into DreamHack. Yeah, we can, this format can exist because it's an RMR event. So why didn't CSPPA push your event or posse up with you guys to make a stronger case for being an RMR? I mean, that seems like better for the players, more money, better for you guys, an emerging league. Someone has to challenge the MTG Battle Cruiser at some point as well, right?
I don't think we discussed it with the CSPPA. I think we just discussed it with Valve. So that's probably the reason why they didn't push it. I have no idea what kind of relationship the CSPPA has with Valve. I really can't speak to that at all. But I mean, I would think that it would be something that they would like. Obviously, the CSPPA and Flashpoint have had our disagreements because they were contractually obligated to do things that they didn't do. So
and they're a little bit cantankerous, believe it or not. I don't know if anyone's been following, but
So
I won't do an impression.
I'm not opposed to working with the CSPPA in the future. I just need them to hold up their side of the deal. You know what I mean?
Sure. Well, that was a whole weird situation as well. I think we've talked about that before, but I mean, it's been very difficult for me to kind of get my head around exactly what the CSPPA is and whether or not it is a force for good. Like last week, we're praising them because they've codified, some COVID protections, which I think are going to be necessary if we ever want to get back to live events. They've ruled out certain formats. And then here we are the next week. And not only is one of those formats that they said shouldn't be happening, but also as well, their treatment towards Flashpoint did seem to just kind of, again, swept under the community rug. Essentially what they said was yeah, were we really contractually obligated? I don't know. Probably, maybe, whatever. Anyway, fuck Flashpoint, and here's our rankings that are utterly garbage. And it's how the fuck is that worked out for them? So very, very weird. I don't know if you guys want to elucidate a bit more on it.
The weird thing about this whole the whole relationship with the CSPPA is that what we asked them to do and what we made a financial obligation to them to do is one of the major things is to create the team rankings, right? Now, I would argue that this is in the CSPPA's best interests, because is having an invisible HLTV formula in anyone's best interest who's a player?
Sure.
No.
Sure. Not at all.
Is having a tournament organizer, in ESL's case, doing the rankings in their best interest?
Nope.
No, because many of these players are not even in ESL participating teams or EPL teams, or they're literally in Flashpoint teams. And for us, we don't want to make a Flashpoint ranking because obviously then the perception will be that it is biased towards us. So we figured, here's a solution. CSPPA, can you please make an independent ranking the players agree on? Because remember, part of the issue with the rankings is that you can't just have no kind of ranking decay if people don't compete in events, but the players should be able to agree on what is the appropriate number of events if they're suffering burnout for a team to be expected to go to. And then they can kind of set the ranking decay based around what they believe is an appropriate number of events for them to attend within a given, year period or 6-month period or however long you're setting kind of the decay for. Now, these formulas are very complicated because even if you're using an ELO format, it has to be jiggered for the scene and jiggered for, where do you start in terms of ELO is a really good question. Do you kind of do a historical ELO up until this point in time and then start teams at those rankings? How far back in time do you go? It's there's a lot, right? How do you weight different tournaments in terms of prestige? Do you take the average ELO of the teams that are present in that tournament and you say, okay, if it's above this ELO, then it's a specific tier and teams must appear in this many A-tier tournaments over the course of the year to not have decay? There are all these very complicated questions. And yeah, you need to hire legitimately a PhD statistician or data scientist to do this. That's what you have to do. But we just thought that this was the best way to accomplish our goals of having a transparent, because here's the other thing. We want this ranking to be perfectly transparent to the audience. It shouldn't be a mystery. It shouldn't be inside the black box where no one knows what it is. Yep. In theory, anybody should be able to calculate this ranking, and it should be something that the players can accept is not too onerous for their schedule, right?
Mhm.
And so I would have thought that this is in the CSPPA's best interests, in addition to our best interests, and we have a contract with them that is paying them money, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that they didn't deliver on that and then have come back with like some, in my opinion, not so great attempts to make that ranking is disappointing. Now, not to say that they can't fix this in the future or they won't fix this in the future. Certainly happy to continue working with them, but I think they kind of need to get their act together a little bit.
Yeah, that's what we've been saying as well. Yeah.
I personally do think, though, that like this is an example. It's a bit like when we're doing our stuff about Astralis, Richard, and we're trying to like reveal what's going on, and we're trying to like educate the public on what is like financial responsibility, you know. And what you find is you just hit a brick wall of people who are like, "Sure, I don't care. I like things the way they are." And you're like, why'd I even bother? That's what it feels like. Because here's the thing: as much as I agree with what Monty just said, I don't think players give a flying fuck, mate. Players are so stupid. They actually think the HLTV ranking was, again, made by God. They think that that's just like, they think like that's like the laws of nature. Like that's like physics or something like, well, if I'm number one, I'm number one. It's like, yeah, but what determined you being number one? Because the reason I say that is,
you don't even know.
As much as you can argue, well, it's not transparent. I don't think it'd matter, mate. Because if people don't know, ESL's ranking is totally transparent. You can go on it, you can click, and you can see for the events how much decay the event gave, how many points the event gave. You can see what the event amplifier, I will admit, because they're fucking ESL and Germans, they've gone out of their way to like obfuscate with like amplifiers and all these factors, right? But I sat down when it first came out. I should have done a video on it, really. And I figured out a whole bunch of scenarios. And this is what's hilarious. This is why you can't let people like ESL, and I wouldn't want Flashpoint to do its own ranking, is because basically, as Monty said, if the CSPPA do it, in theory, the whole premise of the initial selection phase will be we're trying to design, reverse engineer a tournament circuit that allows us to have breaks but not lose all our ranking points. ESL's was the opposite. ESL are so cynical and liars that they actually literally, if you go and look how they defined big events, they just went and looked, and because they're the only people who do tier 1 events that have like 16 teams, they made the cutoff something like, unless your event has 12 teams, it can't be a top tier event. Yeah. What it essentially meant was you could have a tournament with the top 8 teams in the world, and yours could just never be close to theirs in terms of points. So eventually all their ranking did is just say, you must play the EPT. Now, no one wants that. And they, by the way, they're so shameless. They pretended later that like, that was just happenstance or something like, because that's how bad these people are. Because they just know a fan will just go, no, Thorin, they said it wasn't their fault. You know? So, you know, like that trick will always work in esports. You can go back to that well all day long.
Yeah. Well, you know, look, just, I don't want to talk about Flashpoint too much, but the new season's coming up, right? So one of the things that I think's been interesting has sort of been this like community sentiment, where it does feel to me, honestly, that the community want this project to fail. You know, maybe
I'll tell you my favorite, Richard. Here's my pet favorite of the criticisms is where they go, well, I think it's a bad thing for esports. By the way, an amazing comment to make, because by all definitions, it couldn't really be a bad thing. It's just adding extra money for free, and you can still play all the other tournaments in theory except EPL, right? Yeah. But when people go, because it's an exclusive league, by definition, it isn't an exclusive league. You can literally be a nobody team, have who did this, qualify, win the prize money, and you never have to buy in, right? You can qualify again next season. Meanwhile, EPL, by definition, is a closed circuit exclusive league that to even qualify for, you must go and play like MDL or some shit, which is another league. So you essentially have to play a league before their league to get into their league. Like, and yet people are totally cool with that because, again, it's the whole scenario that you'll always run into in esports, which is people just like the status quo. Like they associate the status quo with what I enjoyed before. So they'll never consider, like, if I'm going to say it, it's like that there's like a famous quote that someone had where someone once went up to like a guy who was like a politician or something. They were like, so how are you and your wife doing? And he was like, compared to what? Because the point is like, yeah, like what am I contrasting it against? Like better, worse, like what? Like in that scenario, they don't actually think, well, what am I comparing it to what it was? All they do is just look at something new and go, there's this one thing I don't like, so get rid of the whole thing, which is such a naive way to look at anything that's coming into the scene.
Yeah, and Monty, you know, like there's a theory, the great minds of Reddit. It was debated recently that the reason that a lot of negativity is aimed at Flashpoint is basically because Thorin's involved and he's this sort of Voldemort-like presence, like in esports. And I'll have to show you the thread just for your own amusement. There's some banging comments in there. We were laughing about it last time. It's all of the Thorin bingo, Skip Bayless, he made this.
Loves Alex Jones.
Yeah, Alex Jones is a G. What was the other one? Here's an edgy joke from fucking 10 years ago. How could people stand it? All the usual bullshit.
And he attacked Device.
Yeah, and
all the classics.
And he completely started a fight with Device apropos of nothing.
This is
the way CS:GO subreddit works, right? If I was just sitting eating my dinner, right, and Device just walked up and he did when Masvidal just punched that Leon Edwards guy in the middle of nowhere. Right, imagine it was just some out of the blue scenario like that. I'm just eating and Device just comes over and he hits me with the 2-piece and a soda, right? If I, as I'm being hit, brushed against Device, the headline would just be Thorin attacks Device unprovoked.
Yeah,
That's the way that subreddit works.
I actually collect these comments now because they're just so fucking
What's
funny.
The best one?
All right, well, listen, I've got an absolute cracker. Because this guy just didn't hold back. Oh, no. Don't tell me they've deleted. Oh, have they deleted it? They might have deleted it.
There must be the remove thing, though. Or is that only if the admin deletes it?
Yeah, hang on, no. I'll get it. Oh, they make it so hard. What is the point of me harvesting the lunacy if the mod's going to retroactively,
While Richard's getting this thread up, two things I'll bring up. One, because Richard uses that site where you can just see what the mod's removed. I bet they're so raged that exists, by the way. There was a thread recently where out of something like 257 comments, the mods just removed 140 and any that were in any way defending me. It was actually one of the most absurd, just wig outs I've ever seen from mods in my entire life. They just removed half the thread, Monty.
Right, I've got it. Right.
Which Reddit was this?
So it was in response to DK basically saying the same thing, that Flashpoint's unpopular because Thorin's associated with it. And a regular poster in there, I think it's some failed journalist, right? He literally went straight to the Hitler comparison. There's no fucking around. Thorin and Hitler, the comparison there. So it says, that's because DK's position is basically saying Hitler was a pretty good guy, except for when he tried to kill all the Jews and some other stuff. That is his that is his take on why it's okay to dislike Flashpoint and to criticize Thorin. So that's the type of vitriolic hatred that Thorin inspires.
Esports. You know what I love about esports is that for some reason the fans just focus their hate on you or me or Thorin, right? And there's so many fucking scumbags in this industry, and there's been such insane immorality and abuse and financial scams and everything else that we've got. And guys, sure, it's better than it used to be, but it continues. And Thorin just says what he thinks, and you know exactly what he thinks. And people just tunnel on that instead of focusing on the actual stories that are being brought up or the revelations of real.
But you know why behavior. You know why that is, right? Listen, I'm working on a book. I'm gonna write the definitive book about how.
Is it called Ginger Man Bad?
Yeah, I was gonna tell you about it at some point. No, it's got nothing to do with you, Duncan. Hard as that might be to believe. But anyway, I'm gonna write the definitive book on basically how the internet, reality TV and all that just drove everyone insane. So we're just a bunch of mental cripples walking around with deep psychosis and neuroses right now. But I'll tell you why it is. I've already got this figured out, right? In a regular job, as now increasingly more and more, your employer vets your social media. You can't even say anything in what used to be your private world. That used to be something you owned. That used to be where you could blow off steam. I knew there was somebody as well. I can't remember who it was. It might have been an associate on Twitter. But anyway, they basically ended up getting not hired for a job from a fucking picture of them smoking a blunt on a MySpace page. So that's think how old that is. And they said, like, we can't have that. It implies that you're okay with drugs, you know, a drug that's increasingly becoming legalized and decriminalized around the world. But anyway, so that used to be your world, and we gave that up. For some reason, we all just agreed one day, yeah, the employers can come for your social media page and use it to vet you. I consider that a grotesque violation of your privacy, especially, you know, you've got people, they pay companies to, like, you know, have, like, neutral accounts that, like, fake add you as friends to sniff out your shit. Like, why are we okay with that, by the way? Like, we need a big fucking pushback on that, but whatever. The reality is, you go to work. Most people, 99% of the employed world, goes to work, and you can't say what you think. You absolutely can't, because your boss is a cunt and he's dumber than you, right? And your job sucks, and the customers are cunts and they're dumber than you. But the job, what you're really being paid to do, essentially, is rein it in and eat the shit and slap the grin on your face. And that's how most of us live. I know I lived like that, right? So what happens when you see somebody who has somehow ascended into a job where they can say what they want, and there's no consequences, and there's no one to fire them, and it doesn't matter how loud you complain, or how much you moan, or how many tears you shed, they cannot be punished. You physically cannot punish. And they go, but why? I have to live like this. Won't somebody think about me? I have to live like this. Why does he get away with it? And they never think to themselves, why? Well, if you're sick of that paradigm, why don't you work your way out of it? And they never do that. Right, so that's exactly what's going on there. Thorin is, in many ways, one of the easiest examples to tunnel in on, because a lot of his trappings are working class guy. Like, when most people hear Thorin talk, they don't think he should be like some guy who's used technology to become essentially working independent. They don't hear that. They think he should be answering a fucking phone, you know, for like a call center in the Northeast.
Yeah, that's what I'd be doing in Teesside, mate. I'd be at that fucking place. Yeah. No, the most ridiculous thing as well is, I also, by the way, along those lines, those people, I also know what really infuriates them, which is that when they do what they do in these threads, just wig out completely and do what is currently probably the weakest mental game in the world, in my opinion, which is when you notice people don't respond to you just saying, like, this guy's fucked. You just keep increasing the pitch of hysteria in the hopes that if people think it's really extreme, they'll start to get on board and they'll be like, yeah, oh, yeah, yes. But so when they wig out, right, and the problem is they don't get the response. The response they want is everyone to go, yeah, he's terrible. But here's what happens. Because the secret is, it was never the opinions I gave that made me popular. It was actually the slave driver level of work I've done for like fucking 10 years. Here's what they don't get. Because it was doing the interview with Soaz and fucking Doublelift that made me famous, then they analyze my tweets. It's not like I just don't do the content anymore. So say you say to the other guy, but have you seen this tweet from 4 years ago? And goes, yeah, terrible. Oh, interview with Soaz. Oh. Like, stop watching the interviews. Like, well, he's only here to watch the interviews, you idiot. I realized this about Astralis, Richard. Like, I genuinely realized I was getting too mad at the fans. Because think about it, right? Why were they fans of Astralis? It's not because Astralis were paragons of moral superiority and had principles. They were fans because they're good in the game. So as long as they're good in the game, they're going to be fans no matter what. Their brain is going to let them get around that and think that. And I'll even throw in like one other angle as well, which is people don't get this, right? Because I'll give you a little bit of juice from inside. When we first launched Flashpoint, and I was using my style, and I was bantering ESL, and I was wrecking them, and I was mobile, and they couldn't touch me because they were having to have fucking board meetings, and I was doing tweets on a Saturday night when they were just putting the kids to bed, like, fuck, I'm not going to be in till Monday, and they were having like a powwows, what are we going to say this? And so I was just dancing, I was like, you can't dance all day, I can dance all day. I was fucking wrecking them all day long, mate. But then here's the problem. Then we launched Flashpoint, right? And obviously, we didn't have any of the teams, including the teams I'd been told were signed. So then when we launched it, right, I'm not going to say who, but there was like one owner in Flashpoint had the gall to sort of be like, PR isn't really working out anymore, is it? Even though, by the way, it's like, well, first of all, that's obviously because you didn't give me any of the teams, you fucking idiot. Like, that would be the case anyway. But more importantly, and this is the more key element to me, is I want to just tell that guy, I wish I could take you, mate, in an alternate universe, so I didn't do that. And you could see the control group. Because here's what the control group would have been. Flashpoint launches without any good teams is instantly a joke, is forgotten, nobody talks about it. Or you can do what I do with all my work, which is you have two choices. I give you two choices. You can talk about work or you can talk about me.
Yep.
And you know what? The people who won't talk about my work, they'll have all day long, like this thread, there'll be hundreds of comments about me and fucking. So the same thing, the same people who hate on Flashpoint, at least they have emotion towards it, mate. At least they have some feeling about it. At least it'll be an interesting storyline if it turns on. Or it doesn't
and you
work,
know,
if
people
fails.
hate watch it too. You know, people hate watch
Oh, of course,
like,
yeah.
because they can't ignore it. So they're going to see, more of the interviews or more of the quotes.
I have the best haters ever. Because if you don't know, the worst hater ever, by the way, is the guy who, like, when I used to first post like Kelsey stuff to Reddit, and all they do is just go like, not going to watch this downvote. That's the worst hater because he's fucked you completely. I have the haters where they go, this guy's work is total shit. And then someone will be like, well, I enjoyed some of the episodes. You'll be like, no, look, in episode 177, he said that joke. In 158, he said, I was like, fucking hell, mate, you're secretly my biggest fan. Like, you're watching this like an archivist or something. Like, what? It's not Marvel Comics, you don't have to go flip to paid issue 13 to find out.
I got a bunch of fans like that over in Overwatch right now. It's pretty good. Like, I do enjoy it. But look, so the league has definitely made like vast improvements in terms of the caliber of team that is in attendance. And you were talking about this. Like, we needed to get some top 10 teams involved and some big names.
Oh, I'll be straight up, Richard. I literally told the Flashpoint people, if you don't have better teams in the future, I just won't be in this project anymore.
Yeah.
Because like I said, I'm not here just to get paid and do a cool tournament. Like, I'm here because I want this to be a viable future for Counter-Strike. It doesn't have to have all the teams. We've got to have some. We've got to have something to work with.
Well, I mean, bringing in Big, OG, and Fnatic, I think it is, are the big three. That's a hell of a coup. I mean, like, in terms of where they're positioned in the world rankings, like, I think Fnatic being as low as 11th isn't kind of 100% accurate, right? But it is the online era. I think they're better than that,
Well, Virtus Pro also qualifying has been doing very well in some of these events recently.
Yeah, that Yendikar guy has been popping off, right? So yeah, I mean, I think, and the attention, like before it kind of felt like you were essentially relying on, like a Cloud9 or an MIPR to do the heavy lifting in terms of viewership, right? And it was probably very good for season 1 that MIPR did make it all the way to the final.
Essential.
Yes, very good.
Yeah, but now with Virtus Pro have a huge following as well. I mean, even though the team's not great at the moment, they've still retained a lot of fans for that region. ForZe are in there as well. I'm sure we're going to talk about them a little bit later on. But Fnatic, OG, Big, Dignitas. Yeah, I mean, I think you're going to see a big improvement in viewership, but also in the quality of games and the caliber of games. And it's weird because I just haven't seen a lot of people talking about that actually Flashpoint Season 2. Like, it's not your fault a pandemic pops off partway through. Everyone's had to pivot. But, like, what you've been able to do in terms of bringing people in during this weird time, I think people should probably recognize that that's a job well done, right? You can pat yourselves on the back. It's okay.
Mike's muted himself.
Thanks.
Oh, there you go. No, he hasn't.
No. I think my internet just had a little hiccup there. But yeah, I think given the effort that we've gone to and the help that we've had from FaceIt, especially, they've done a great job of trying to encourage teams and come and play in the event as well. And so I think when it comes to Flashpoint, obviously our goal was to be better than we were last time around in terms of team quality. And I think we've achieved that. I think both in terms of qualifier teams and in terms of invited teams, and also in terms of our partner teams. Like Cloud9 is obviously going to be significantly better than they were at, the last time they played in our event. And Gen G, I think they haven't made their roster announcements yet, but I think that they will also be fielding a team that people are going to be excited about watching. So I think there are some big,
and then there's other teams playing as well. So nice of them as well. Nice of them to participate. Shout out Astro.
But also as well, like, I mean, I think there's a lot of intrigue there. I mean, there's reasons to watch, right? Like, you've got Cloud9, making their debut. You've got the new look MIBR, right? Like, are any of these players going to be able to, like, live up to the expectations? Obviously, within the context of what's been happening at the Blast, suddenly OG are a very tantalizing prospect. The new look Mad Lions with the new lineup they've put together. I'm probably missing out a few others.
Well, the shocker actually is VP, because VP has beaten Na'Vi in 2 best-of-3s in like the last 2 weeks or something crazy. So like that team, remember, was just dead and buried 2 months ago? They were non-existent, and somehow from our qualifier on, they've just lit up and they just won that CIS division.
I've also done a spoonerism. He is called Yakinda, not Yadinka. I don't know what the fuck I said, but anyway, that guy is
whatever.
Obviously, not famous enough, is he?
Well, no, they
get
people
him
don't like it.
Don't be silly. You know.
He's been popping off.
He has been good, yeah.
Yeah. So I've got to give him the respect of at least saying his name correctly. You know, I'll that's the bare minimum I'm willing to do.
The other angle that I didn't like about Flashpoint 1 was this. It's one thing if the teams aren't good. Like, that's fine. That can happen. Like, for example, sometimes you can have what you think's a good team and it does badly, obviously. But the other thing that killed me was you had low level of competition and then simultaneously, not even many stars. Like, you had MIBR. That's about how far we were stretching it. Beyond that, who are you going to say? Dignitat, shut the fuck up. First of all, like, they were terrible and they were stars from years ago. So, like, there wasn't many people you could sort of like put forward as like, these are some of the best players in the world. Whereas, like, mate, those Fnatic players, some of those players are good players now. Some of those players are legends right now. Obviously, Cloud9's got some players everyone wants to see. Yeah, now the difference is we've got a mixture of the young talent and the older ones. And like, I think we've got enough where the talent can work with it. Forget just the tournament, what it's going to be like. We actually can star build and do the narratives. Whereas like, as cool a narrative as it is that like, oh, Havu does like a miracle run through. It's like, who are they beating though? You know, they're beating teams that seem irrelevant, basically.
I will say, like, at the very least, our playoffs should be pretty good. Right. I think once we whittle it down to the top 4, I think all of those matches will be quite exciting.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I'm actually looking forward to it. It's going to work out pretty good because the way we're going to do it, and Sam will jump in if any of this is wrong, but the way we've got it planned is because we're doing the bot major, right? So a bot simulate, which I've just realized as well. Me and Sam went to do the schedule, and I was like, "Yeah, we can bang this out in a week." And Sam's like, "Whoa, sunshine! Not unless you want to work 16-hour days." I'm like, "You are." He went, "No, like if you want to do like
it's 33 best of ones per stage.
Yeah,
the first 2 stages.
So I'm like, wait a fucking minute, like people are surely going to get content fatigue of watching bots play for 2 fucking weeks. So I don't even know now what the fuck we're going to do. But anyway, the bot major's running on. It's going to run over while Flashpoint's on, and in the spirit of, you know, now that I'm a tournament organizer, not wanting to fuck over a fellow tournament organizer, we are going to wait and not broadcast our games until like 4 p.m. So you've got ample time, you know, for your games to have ended. And, so it'll be like Flashpoint and then into the bot major.
ESL will still be streaming, I'm sure. Like,
yeah, of course.
I'm pretty sure they haven't turned their stream off in the last 3 months.
No. There's always something on all the time. So yeah, look. So I'll be tuning in. I might even hit up Michele and see if the co-streaming stuff's going to be going on again. And
I think it probably will be.
Yeah. So, you know, and that way it'll be a nice, I can just sit around all day in my shreddies watching CS and then watching bots play CS like some fucking no life in, bro.
And in this version of Flashpoint, hopefully you can tell the difference.
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, I think
why don't we collaborate? You can call yours the CIS division of Flashpoint.
So anyway, the news. So let's get into the news and everything that's been going on. Enough about Flashpoint. The big story that everyone's been talking about the last few days is that, as reported in HLTV, which, by the way, this is super rare that HLTV kind of do this. They generally tend, rather than breaking news stories, you know, usually it comes out from a beat reporter first, and then HLTV go, verify it, you know, nail it down, and then they run their own report. But actually, this came out of the blue, that Mira, who I think is a great journalist, by the way, and a cool guy, he did a report saying that G2 are closing in on the NiKo deal. So it's been speculated going all the way back to September that NiKo is going to be joining G2. It's been obfuscated by like Ocelote and Nexa making joke tweets. So people are like, is it real? Isn't it? Now we've seen Coldzera's mother put a tweet out saying, please, from the Coldzera family, please don't go NiKo. And then deleting it. So that added,
that's what I love as well. People who still don't know how the internet works, and they're just like, sorry, I deleted it. So
yeah, yeah, I've deleted it, so surely that won't get brought up for the rest of my fucking life. Wrong. So anyway, they have put their own report out, and they're standing by their reporting, saying that NiKo is going to join G2 and will be out. The deal will be done so quickly that actually, at the blast, Olaf is going to have to be a stand-in for NiKo. Like it's that close that they're even negotiating about bringing Olaf back for this. My take, I think this isn't going to be a great move, honestly. I know all the G2 fans are loving it because their fucking win percentage is like 35% at the moment over the last 3 months. They're finishing like dead last in leagues, at tournaments. They look awful. I don't know what happened. It's like they got #1 in the world and then they just instantly turned to shit. But if NiKo was capable of carrying a failing team upwards to winning tournaments, with the exception of the one that they did win recently, then FaZe would have been killing it, right? And on top of that, what's going to happen to like Nexa? Which one of the 2 support players is going to get removed for the star player? What's that going to do all round for like, you know, how the calling? What's NiKo's attitude going to be like? There's so many question marks about this. I actually think this is going to be a costly disaster, but I'll get both of your thoughts on it now.
Like being as on the last episode, I think it was that one. I did analyze like if what would happen if NiKo joined or whatever, and I saw you did a video on it similarly. I'll just do the joke angle, which is this. There's 2 parts. One is like, this is how shameless NiKo is, because one of the things about NiKo that I can't handle is he just refuses to accept any responsibility for his own life and his own actions. And so as a result, it's like he just went, this FaZe clan's like fucking ruined. Can I come join that G2? That looks pretty good. It's like, I wonder why it's ruined. And by the way, anyone who still believes to this day that he didn't have any control, and it's like, you literally would just buy snake oil from anyone. You are so stupid. It's unbelievable. And then the other angle is this. Even though I realize it's probably because he either maybe still had a contract he was running out and they just were paying him like, you know, furloughed money or whatever for Olaf, or they just have such a good connection. Maybe some guy at FaZe is like pals with him and just, can you just come back and stand in a little bit? But if you're on the outside and you were going to be uncharitable, which I'm going to be a lot from now on, NiKo, so get ready, buckle up, son. The best thing is, you're now in an org where you have to put on that fucking crying face meme and pretend you're loving it because you're in G2 now. And by the way, your owner, Ocelot, fucking loves my shit. He tells me all the time. He even asks me if I'd join. I might join soon, to be fair. You know what? I'll be giving second thoughts. I feel like I could do some real good work with the CSGO division. But anyway, that's by the by. So obviously, then it looks from the outside like Olaf. You know that joke that like Bill Hicks had about like Ringo and the Beatles where they were doing drugs and he goes like Ringo's on the scene and he goes, John's like, come on, come down Ringo. Yoko's gone. We can party again. It's like, that's what it was like. It's like Olaf kid. Like Rain was like, hey, Olaf, you can come back now, that dickhead. All right, NiKo. Oh, you haven't gone yet. Fuck yeah, this last turn. Yeah, we'll play that. We'll play that. Olaf, he just came to see how he's going. Because you saw his response on Twitter where he was like, what? Because he'd obviously said he like...
Yeah, I've just given that to Sam if you want to bring it up now.
Let me just decode that for you, homie. He's never coming back to FaZe if you're in it. The second you're in it, he's like, you know what? Wrist's feeling good. Motivation's there. Self-esteem. He goes, you know what? I could even go at this old Counter-Strike again. And then NiKo's like, oh, really? Because I was just 7 second thoughts. Like, well, you know, motivation comes and goes, wins. You know, give me a break, mate. This just looks so bad from the outside in all respect.
Yeah, Monty, what do you think of it? Because I know, you know, you're no stranger to these kind of big, high power star player moves, right?
And let me put this in because I'm not the expert on the gameplay, so like I can't tell you like how exactly NiKo's going to fit in with like Nexa and Hunter on
G2. Don't know either, mate. Let's be honest. So
I can't talk about that. But what I can talk about is an intimate familiarity with G2 as an organization and as an ownership structure. And I can tell you how it works in League of Legends on that side. And for the most part, Carlos is very lucky because the League of Legends team basically runs itself. He has hit on a group of players that are so motivated and are so well led by Perks, like the team captain, who is just an extraordinary leader, both inside and outside of game, that they don't really need a lot of micromanagement. Famously, people accuse their coach of doing nothing because, you know,
the team that of recruiting everyone. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like Perks is that went out there like wheeling and dealing in the off season, and really the players are super knowledgeable about allegedly. Allegedly. So my point is like Carlos has, not to say Carlos can't do it or like GM this roster, but my point is like when you look at the League of Legends team success and you think that equates with G2's like excellent management skills, it's basically a division that runs itself, and he's very lucky to have that. Yes. And to his credit, he also doesn't meddle in the thing that's working, right? But my point is that from my experience of watching NiKo's career, he cannot be trusted to run a team, basically. And he does, unlike Perks, he's not making decisions that result in titles or result in a very cohesive whole within a team. So knowing that, I think it's going to come down to the G2 organization to really have a much more heavy hand. And I'm not saying they can't do that, but it does make me wonder if they can, because most of their success is in a very different, they scout a very different kind of player. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, and look, so I think I'm definitely in agreement, by the way. Like, Carlos is great at what he does, and he was always going to be successful. But like where he's got to, I don't even think me as like one of his like biggest fans could have sort of.
It's inconceivable.
Yeah, I couldn't have foresaw like how big G2 would be and how successful they would be and have a dynastic team over in like fucking League of Legends and stuff. It's crazy. But and what the thing I love about him first and foremost is he's just got a giant set of fucking nuts. He's just swinging them around all the time.
Entertaining. His brand presence is insane for that team. I mean, even though like the G2 name is like definitely one of the shittiest team names in esports, somehow he's spun it into having a meaning and having a weight to it through his own personality. It's an extension of Carlos, which is wonderful because his Twitter game is aces, right?
Yeah.
And it comes through in the League of Legends players as well. And he's had a very good ability to scout rosters. I mean, he's done very well in Rainbow Six, for example. He's done well in Rocket League in the past. So he has a history of success and titles in other games. But my point is that usually the G2 method is like find the very self-sufficient teams and players and then empower those rosters, not let's get the problem guy and we have this like ace management coaching staff that's really going to develop this guy, or that we've got this kind of mastermind plan. G2 is just chaos. It's a chaos org, and that works for some players, but I question whether it will work with NiKo.
Yeah, well, with NiKo, they are getting fucking chaos, that's for sure.
Yeah. I've got an angle no one's probably thought of, right? Because I was just thinking there, we're thinking of Ocelote, the owner, Carlos R, right? You notice he doesn't call himself Ocelote anymore. But I always think of him, like, I call everyone by the game name, except Richard, because I have to pretend that doesn't exist, even though I'd still burned in my brain, so whatever. So... what's hilarious is now people who think they're old school be like, what, Richard A. Lewis? It's like, yeah, whatever, just do whatever you need to be, kids. So, right, think about when Ocelote was a player.
I want to stress it's nothing offensive. Don't kid.
No.
It's probably a little bit cringe because
when Ocelote used to be a League of Legends player, right? He at one point in time was one of the best players in the game early on. He was in one of the biggest teams, SK Gaming. It was one of the top European teams. They were a team that was at a championship level, contending for world championship. But then the problem was, his fame superseded the team, and eventually he was just all about bragging about the money. If you remember, he did make that outrageous lie where he said he made like fucking $300,000 a year of merchandising in like 2014. I even told him off the camera, like, mate, come on, you just got to be a better angle to this. Like, there's got to be something, give me something to work with. Like, right back on camera. Well, how do you make the money? Well, like scarves and that. Like, shut the off the camera again. Fly. Like, anyway, obviously it became suddenly all about him and all about him being famous. Yeah. And if people don't know, he started to take control over the team, and he decided who stayed in the team and who left. And they didn't make, by the way, the key upgrades they should have made, because, for example, he should probably have stepped aside. He wasn't as good a player anymore. And all of a sudden, he ran this team semi into the ground, and they had to reboot later on. So, actually, how would that connect to NiKo at all? I lost my train there. I don't know how that would connect to NiKo at all. No, the joke is, he might actually have some experience, because now Ocelote's a cool as fuck guy. Like, he actually gets it now. So I actually think, for real, if he does get NiKo, I hope he has that heart-to-heart with him. It's just like, listen, dude, you can turn this around. Like, there's a way you can take all the positives of this, but not have the negatives of it. Because that's one thing that I do think is super whack. Like, I said it on Twitter, and people are missing it. For the player in the server, you get NiKo. He doesn't fit your org ethos at all. This is the definition of a player with a stick up his ass. Like, he can't banter. Can't at all. His version of banter is just people just bowing and not ever dissing him.
I know, it is ridiculous.
The G2 org is all about self-deprecating humor. Yes. What would NiKo's self-deprecating humor be?
Yeah, well, he doesn't have that capacity,
exactly.
Does he? And it's interesting because, like, I'm sure he's already looked at the tweets that, like, people like Nexa have made, where Nexa's like going, Oh, can't wait for us to get NiKo so I can be kicked in 6 months.
That was funny as fuck. That was funny as fuck.
Which is such a great tweet. And I bet NiKo's going, well, at least he knows what fucking time it is.
Exactly,
And he's like, not a trace of humor in his brain at all. No. So, listen, I think this is a risky move, but like also it does have to be said, G2 are fucking horrible right now.
Yes.
They've got to do something. It's just, I think bringing in a star player, a temperamental star player at that, and chipping away at the support structure, maybe that isn't the play. I don't know. I really don't know. And I'm also worried as well, like Hunter being there. NiKo will do a hostile takeover at some point. Like I feel it's almost inevitable. Because he's got his cousin to back him up as well. And Hunter's such a nice guy.
Yes,
he's not going to.
That's the weirdest part about it, is that Hunter is completely different in that sense. Like, he actually is just a chill guy who's never had any problems with anyone, despite also being a very good player. So like, I don't even like, that's basically an undertone in Rich's video that he didn't like explicitly say, but like, NiKo's just going to fuck the vibe up, isn't he? Like, here's the thing. If you're going to make a team with NiKo, in a way, FaZe was the right team. You want a bunch of other superstar egos who just know, like, right, well, I remember what it was like to be the best player in the world. Fair enough. Like, he gets to do it right now. It's his turn, like, in a way, they'll overlook that. Whereas in this team, another thing people are really missing is they're just looking at the numbers of JacKz and AmaNEk. I can tell you, I've got an episode coming out now. We don't really talk about him much, but I have an episode with Malik coming out on one of my talk shows. And we don't talk about this, but we talk about some of his past teams. And what you'll see is this is a guy like Henry G who has a methodology to how he builds a team, to what roles he wants and how he divides it up, and how, for example, you convince the star player to do something, and then privately you sort of have to go to a supportive player and be like, you're going to have to cover this frame, and like, listen, we'll discuss this separately. And you basically set it up so the star player doesn't know what's happening, but the team functions. And then obviously, if you're someone like JacKz, you go, I have done it again. It's like, well, sort of, you've been allowed to believe that. So the premise is, like, they're obviously going to kick one of those fucking support legs out from underneath the whole project and go, just add another frag. It's like, if fragging was already there, why would you need another guy? Like, that's one thing I've always hated in Counter-Strike. It's why I hated the moves that Ents made, a bunch of, it's like, I hate moves where it's like, right, well, it's like, the analogy would be a sporting analogy. It's like, right, well, this wide receiver is just shit and drops it all. Kick out one of the offensive line and just get another wide receiver. So, well, kick the wide receiver that doesn't do anything. Replace him. This doesn't make sense. Like, that's what they should have done. They should have picked, and it'd be a hard choice. Who is it? Can't cut the mustard. And even if you recruit NiKo, at least he replaces him.
Yeah. So we haven't really talked a lot about what this does to FaZe. Like, I think this sort of ends.
Looks like it's dead.
I think FaZe is dead.
Yeah, I think it really ends them as a CS entity, which, by the way, they maybe have a mind to get out of it and go into Valorant. They're that kind of org where it's like they want to be where the cool kids are. They're a lifestyle brand as much as an eSports org, So maybe, but it just seems like...
Also, the Valorant players they've hired, just as an aside, are like insane brand fits for them. Like, Baby Bay is the perfect, like the absolute perfect, like FaZe. And I say this is out of place of deep love for Baby Bay. He's one of my favorite personalities, and like one of my closest friends is a player from Overwatch. But that guy is just built for FaZe. It's amazing.
Yeah, which, like you say, that could be taken as an insult in some circles, right? But yeah, like it's just such a terrible end. Like, if you look at the history of this team, the first ever true power team in CS, the missed ring, that was the Boston Major. Eventually, then we, and into the NiKo era, where you think surely this guy's going to be able to build the team he wants, and they're going to be able to create a little mini dynasty at the end or something. Never happened. We had to watch like Guardian end up on the Knackers yard, Olofmeister. Once Carrigan went, essentially, like, FaZe for me was just, it was sort of like an elephant's graveyard of players. You were just watching them wither away.
Just set in, didn't it? One by one, like you're saying. Like, the sad thing is, they held it together for a little while, but like you're saying, one by one, they just like decayed and went away. And if people want to know something that they won't understand, they're going to say, Thorin, how can you say that? Even after NiKo took over as IGL, they were winning tournaments. Like, they won Epicenter, and they won. Like, I've got a video I did on this concept, which is just watch teams that kick or remove the IGL from his role. Obviously, they don't just go, right, and all those great strats and all the strats, chuck that out the window. No, you keep it for now. You keep doing it. It's why Alexi B said that in an interview. At the beginning of this year, he said, when I looked at Ents doing their tactics, 70% of them for spawn, which is what I did months earlier. So obviously, there's this hangover effect where you get to still benefit, but you've kicked the IGL. Once it had been enough time cleared from that, we all know all they were doing was winning the odd blast where it was a bunch of the best of ones or some wonky tournament format where, for a start, it's not even full fields. It's whoever the fuck they invite. So, like, these were the most asterisks tournaments of all time. And the worst thing is, this is why I know NiKo doesn't get it, mate. If you go on his Instagram, those are like his cherished memories, mate. Pictures of him like holding the blast. He thinks that's legit. He thinks that's real shit. Like, he thinks that is like him and coldzera, like proving everyone wrong. You didn't prove anyone wrong. It's the opposite. You proved your fans wrong, if anything, for fuck's sake. They thought, how could these two lose together? And it's like, that's the saddest thing about it is what a waste of talent. And
well, it could have been one of the great CS parents. Like when they finally got together. Like I know you're not getting vintage coldzera. Coldzera is still a fucking great player. Yeah, like straight up, he's still got it right in a lot of matches that he plays. And NiKo, I think, you know, there's still an argument to say he's like, you know, third, fourth best player in the world. Yeah, so the idea that they finally get to play with each other and it's this garbage. Like, it's
I'll give you a little
disappointing.
I'll just do a little preemptive call out here, just for the fans who still don't get how full of shit this guy is. Right? Logically, he's implied he didn't have any say in any of this. He was never the one deciding the moves. He never wanted to be an IGL. He never wanted to bring these people in. He never wanted to kick them. He never wanted any. He never had any control whatsoever. Well, you know what, NiKo? Bad luck for you, mate, because I always keep receipts of this shit and I keep a mental track of people's alibis. That's the key thing. I watch your alibi because it's the same thing I always said to you, Richard. I'm the only one who ever nailed this. I don't actually need to see evidence Flusher cheated to think he did because the alibi was so stupid it didn't work. The alibi, remember, was I only did that weird move because my hand kept hitting into the edge of my keyboard. That's how I used the mouse. I told Khan the event after he said that, you fucked yourselves because now he has to do those same dodgy aim locks his whole career, you idiot, because that's his mousing style and he just accidentally hits the keyboard a bunch. So when he doesn't, spoiler, he didn't do it like maybe one time for the next fucking 4 years, he did it. Magically, you just learned how to aim differently. Did you fuck? That doesn't even make sense. So similarly, here's the problem, NiKo. That's all well and good while you're in FaZe, because then you can say, I'm also prohibited from speaking about such matters. Second, you leave FaZe, mate. I'm waiting for the most epic interview ever because you can go from A to Z, mate. Tell us about all the times they made you take on players that suspiciously you respect, but no one else in the scene does because they're all washed. Tell us about the way that the IGL, you literally are so stupid you can't even lie about. By the way, if someone like me calls you out and implies you kicked Carrigan, probably don't do a video right afterwards where you go, Carrigan, overrated if you ask me.
Yeah, no.
Like, listen, he can't even keep his story straight because that's the problem with people who've just got to screw loose. Like they just think, can just lie indiscriminately. So, like I say, there better be the best ever interview where you just go deep on like how they manipulated you and lied to you and never give you any. It's not going to happen, of course. You're just going to leave that. It's going to be buried in your past. So maybe I'll just fucking dress up as you do the fucking. I'll get the bread head. I'll do the full fucking thing. It'll be like one of those like. Listen, it won't be high quality like prosthetics, Richard. It'll be like fucking Deep Space Nine level like shit, like with one of them foreheads or something. But I'll do it myself. I'll just go.
Well, listen, I did get in touch with him after he said that he was like, oh, I'm like misunderstood. I'm like so maligned. And you have to understand, like, I consider myself to have a pretty decent relationship, all things told, with NiKo. Like, there was an incident that people might not know about, which like back in 2017, where there was one of these dodgy skins websites were basically running adverts saying NiKo endorsed them. And that NiKo was an official ambassador. And I got in touch with NiKo and said, listen, you need to shut this down because this is a dodgy site that's probably going to steal everyone's money. And then people are going to be all up on your shit. So, I think he went to a legal team and got it all changed. Like, I'll look out for players in that regard. And NiKo's no different to any other player in the space. But he did say he was going to do like an interview, right? Didn't he? When I'm so misunderstood. And I was like, well, I'll do it if you want, mate. But he's like, I just haven't decided who I'm going to do it with. The implication being he definitely won't do it with you, Duncan. And he definitely won't, and I'm obviously out all of a sudden as well. And it's like, well, all right, I don't know who else there is really that's going to get to the,
This motherfucker's like the princess and the pea or something, isn't it?
Yeah.
I can't handle it.
It's like, listen, if he's got a problem with anything we say on this podcast, which, by the way, he watches it, And
they all do. I learned this
I
years ago. Even when the views, like, some years we would have like 20k views or something. So I would think, that's not as big as like some of the League of Legends ones I do. Yeah, not every fan watched it. Every fucker in the industry does, because half of them are just waiting, like, what are they going to say about me now? Like, and they just can't watch.
They're hovering over the timestamps, like looking for their name. Of course they are.
Yeah, like I'll legitimately like say straight up, like the offer's open, and I'll ask him the questions, and he'll have the same platform.
He can wreck me if he wants.
Yeah, of course. Well, that goes without saying, right? I mean, like, fuck. I try and be as fair as I can, but like, with all the information that's laid out, the things I know behind the scene, I talk to all players at all levels. Like, obviously, fucking, it's not a good look. It looks like you've been given complete control of what was once a super team, been told you can rebuild it. You get everything you want, including, like, obscure players like, BMAS, who was just brought in and then just fucking...
Suspiciously, who you'd said earlier you thought was the next future. Like, again, NiKo, how many fucking threads have to link together before you might have done it, mate? Like, give me a break.
It's like, I'm not... You don't have to be Sherlock fucking Holmes to piece this one together, so... but anyway, so I'll move on to the next topic, and I'll get Monty in on this one. This is... Well, I also know that you're in a bit of a rough spot on this one. But ForZe, right? ForZe. Yep, qualified for Flashpoint, as we know. And then they made an inexplicable hiring choice just the other day. We've spent the last, 2 weeks, 3 weeks lamenting some of the reactions to E6 coaching ban and how unperturbed and non-serious some organizations have been about it. But what I didn't expect was the worst offender, Zona, who abused the bug for over 400 rounds, completely subverted tournaments.
The guy did 400 times more cheating than dead.
Yeah, exactly.
What a statement.
Right. Yeah, right. He used it for over 400 rounds in multiple games because multiple opponents, literally altered the futures of teams by the ones that got beat, right? And got a 3-year ban, the biggest ban out of anyone.
It was increased as well.
Yeah,
from
right.
The initial one.
Yeah, so, and showed no remorse. Right, showed like literally zero remorse. Didn't even offer up like you could go internally to ESIC and go, I did it in all these games. Like, I'm really, really sorry, and get 10% off. Like it was fucking Woolworths or something. This cunt didn't even do that.
It was just like, you'll never catch me, coppers. Oh shit, they've got all the demos.
Yeah, you on video, you dumb cunt. So anyway, ForZe hired him, and then like just made a tweet saying,
everyone who made the initial comments on this just had the worst. Like that HLTV guy had one of the fucking worst.
We'll get to that. We will.
I'm glad that's in the lineup because the chain effect that this bad PR had was just terrible. It's like dragging everyone into a black hole of PR, wasn't it?
But yeah, so they made an announcement. Now, first of all, as well, like Sam, here's the first tweet when they announced it. Right, I don't want this. Right. Look at the picture they have used.
I know.
I don't want him cheering in victory. I want him in like shackles.
Yeah.
I want bars over his motherfucking face. I don't want to think about this guy winning and doing good things. He's a motherfucking serial cheat. He is a blight on the fucking Counter-Strike landscape. Whatever happened to like outright condemnation, by the way?
They had a chance to just Photoshop him naked and put the shame nun behind him.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, but like the way they frame it as well in the initial tweet, like just Alexander Zona has officially joined the coaching staff for ForZe School. Alexander has a lot of experience in competitive CSGO, which can apply and work with the students and help them in the game. And he'll be working with Alexei DSTR Baranov. Right, now listen, right? He's known for someone else, isn't he?
Well, Richard, on the more strict technical language, he does know all the strats of all the CIS teams. So he could really teach these young kids a thing or two. He's got all the up-to-date strats, how to spawn, rotations. Like, in some ways, he's the most insightful figure in that whole scene.
So, like, Monty, like, for just some thoughts on this, like, because obviously you've spanned multiple esports scenes yourself. I cannot think of an example where a relatively prominent esports organization has decided to hire someone who was just been recently convicted for cheating and then deliver like a fanfare like it's a super great thing. I don't think it's happened before.
The mind boggles at their PR, but. I don't know. Maybe it's the playbook of the Russian government or something like that as well, where they just present everything as absolutely great, even though people know that there's some pretty severe flaws, perhaps to that. I think so. Let me talk about the problem. So the problem here, from a competitive standpoint, is this, right? If we at Flash, like, we can't control who is actually behind the scenes coaching this team, because they've said, okay, well, he's going to coach the youth team, but honestly, we can't know. Like, we can do reasonable due diligence and be like, is he on comms during their breaks? Is he in the server? Like, we can affect that. But if he's doing like pre or post match prep, and he is kind of, an analyst for the team in the same way that Hunden is serving as an analyst right now, there's really nothing we can do about that, right? Because it's completely unenforceable. So, I mean, they qualified legitimately as far as we know without his help. Their other coach was cleared of wrongdoing by ESIC, so everything seems above board there. But there's not really any, like, even if we said, hey, you need to remove this guy from your organization, they could still just pay him and say they did it, and nothing would change, right? So we sort of have limited ability to affect this, right? And all we can say, and what we will say to them, is that clearly he cannot be participating in Flashpoint.
Yeah, and listen, I don't want overreach, by the way. I don't want overreach. I said this many, many times, like, during this, like, because I woke up to a thread of my tweet where I said, like, leagues should shun this fucking org until they fucking understand the gravity of what they've done and what they've said. Because it's not just the hiring of the guy or the fact that they've deemed
ethos, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not just that they've deemed a serial cheat appropriate to work with young athletes, which is like the equivalent of like someone who's been banging fucking decaball like in sprinting.
Do remember that the Russians were also with the Olympic doping scandal.
Yeah, right.
So...
Yeah, but it's what I mean. It's like it would be like having someone who's just been caught like fucking spiking for 2 years, gets a ban, and then it's like, listen, he can't work in the big leagues anymore, but he can teach those kids how to shoot up. Like, fuck me, like that. It's the optics of it are so grotesque, and they've doubled down, tripled down, and quadrupled down. I woke up to a thread today telling me that because of my secret alt-right roots, I have a problem with the Russian region. As well as the Brazilian region. There's no region is safe because I didn't criticize Hunden, apparently. Well, I did. You can go watch it.
What are you on about? We even said on this show he shouldn't be hired by Heroic. By the way, I actually love Hunden. I think he's an awesome guy. But I agreed he should not have a job within Heroic. He should, because this is one thing people are missing. You should send a message, like you're saying, that your team doesn't support cheating, that until people have paid their dues, done the punishment, they can't be considered being hired back in any capacity. Because similarly, this is how you know that org is full of shit and that they are disingenuous in the way that they are presenting this. What relevance would it be that he took like a bunch of young nobodies to the major? What would that relevance that have to do? That's like saying, I committed a crime, but I used to like help loads of kids and do charity work. The crime is the crime, mate. That will never get you time off. Like, maybe after the fact, as they tried to like fucking totally skew this, maybe you could earn your way back into the scene by good deeds, but you don't do that in lieu of punishment. You do the punishment first. Like this, they're making it sound like, because I know with the example we're going to come up with in a minute, like it's probably the worst version of that take, which we'll get into in a minute, I guess.
Yeah, well, look, listen.
What just cracks me up about this whole thing is that he's being sent as like a role model into their youth team. Like, not to say that it's a real crime, because he didn't do a real crime. Like, what he did was not criminal in any way. It wasn't match fixing.
You could probably be considered defrauding someone. Like, especially when you consider money on the, like, listen, it'd be a very convoluted case that would probably never go. But I think there could be a world where that could be a crime if you really pursued it.
Yeah,
right. I'm just saying that we don't take like convicted felons and then have them, put them in our school rooms to teach people, or we don't take people who do match fixing in sports and then put them in charge of our little league baseball teams. Right. Maybe that's not, look. I'm one of the people who firmly believes that to be a star in esports doesn't mean that you're somehow obligated to be a fucking role model, right? But at the same time, if you are going to be coaching youth, perhaps you should be a role model. Perhaps you should be a role model.
So shout out, by the way, to the accounts Ratazengo, and Illuminati_confirmed, who have cracked the case. And listen, if I'm supposedly a Trump supporter, I should love Russia, shouldn't I? Like, wasn't it all collusion? Apparently, I hate the CIS region. No, it makes no sense. Just more gobbledygook from desperately ill people on social media, but whatever. So anyway, then next, right? After they got called out for their...
This is literal Russian collusion, but let's just ignore the hilarity of that itself, which they're essentially defending Richard. Ooh, I've got them in a moral paradox now, haven't I? Fucking hell.
Mate, moral paradoxes don't work anymore, mate. So anyway, they then said, to make things a little bit more clear... Okay.
Oh, but their PR guy also... First class, amazing shit. It's coming down the pike now. I know.
I'm glad you're competing in our event, but please stop tweeting. That account is just, dear Lord.
Yeah, and listen, I don't want to put you guys in a bind where you're going to have a difficult conversation like tomorrow.
Oh, that's just funny. Don't worry about me.
Yeah, all right, good. So anyway,
in for a penny, in for a pound,
right,
or ruble.
So they then did a tweet to clear things up, right? And at this point, you probably clear things up.
Just apologized and said, of course.
Maybe we didn't read the room, but no. They just repeat the same thing over again, like a fucking British tourist on holiday talking to someone who doesn't speak English. It's so dumb. Like, ForZe School is a project to teach and qualify new talents, but it's not an academy team, and it's not affiliated with our main roster. Zona has made a big, shameful mistake, but we've decided to give him a second chance, as he's a well-experienced coach. And so it's fine, guys. During the test coaching period, he had positive feedback from our students. They went, I'm loving all these new ways to cheat.
I know.
Yeah, it's fucking
We're winning every game.
Yeah.
I really wish that they had just put this in all caps, like they were just saying it louder as if we didn't understand it the first time.
Yeah.
No, but why have they done that angle? Like, right, bring in young Andre, like... Please, why can't Mr. Zona play? He's such a good... Like, what sort of mad angle is this again? What does that have to do with it?
He taught me how to see through walls. I mean, yeah, it's ridiculous, right? Therefore, we hope he will improve and use this chance under the supervision of our management. Otherwise, we can part our ways. So people still said, like, optics suck. I made my tweet. And then...
This part is my favourite part, because this is like... People think my tweeting's bad. I'm not the CEO of an org, though, am I? Like, just the way this tweet starts is straight fire.
Yeah. So let me get it here, because I've been bookmarking their tweets because they're just popping off. Like,
of course,
they're straight popping off.
They were using, like, best defense is a good offense. That was like their whole philosophy on this PR campaign.
Yeah. So oh fuck. God, they're still going. Actually, this is happening in real time.
They can't be stopped. We can't keep up.
Yeah, this is actually ridiculous. Where was the fucking tweet they aimed at me? That's the one at Thorin.
I got it.
Right, here we are. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, good one. Right, so it says, okay. We have a coach working with our main roster, LMBTCS. Yeah, remember that, you little cunts. You screamed and cried about him being found guilty, and then on appeal, his ban was lifted. You still haven't explained, by the way, who was moving the camera, but I guess we'll never get to the bottom of that little mystery. Try to read and our statement. I'll obviously translate.
You're the stupid one, Richard.
Yeah. Try to read our statement one more time. Right? Fantastic. Yeah, he's working with kids. That's what I object to. Kids that you may eventually bring into your main team or might have to act as a stand-in during COVID or whatever. One more thing. In case if you're suspecting him to work with our main roster, they then link me to the Wikipedia definition of presumption of innocence. I don't know how presumption of innocence would apply here, because he's fucking guilty. He's mad guilty. He's the guiltiest guilty cunt who's ever been found guilty of anything, like, and zero remorse.
It's not only that, but this isn't a legal issue. Like, you could link me to presumption of innocence all day long, but it doesn't fucking matter because we're not in a court of law, right? This is the court of public opinion. Yeah. But yes, he's also super guilty, so it doesn't matter.
And then this was their first and last respond to you ever after all the insults from you. All the insults!
I know. It's amazing.
I didn't say anything. I even made a point of bringing up how LMBT was fucking innocent on my last episode to give you, like, the fair platform and cover everything. Never insulted ForZe. Don't even think about them.
If you all think that,
you're a tier 2 Russian
an insult, maybe just look at some of the past episodes about MIBR we did, like,
Yeah. Like, you don't want that treatment. So anyway, I was like, well, fucking hell's bells. Like, how can you be that butter over what is just a thought that
the reply to themselves is really just blowing my mind.
Oh, remember, you've missed out as well, where like the CEO did that tweet that started like essentially the equivalent, like, listen, morons, I'm going to say this one more time. Like, when the CEO guy did that.
Yeah, no, I do. Yeah. So I'm getting to that. But then they also, because someone said that, like, using the word journalist in inverted commas. Oh, actually, that's out of chronological sync. So we will now go to the CEO. The CEO basically said, like, listen, we've got the right to hire whoever we want, and if you don't like it, you're a moron. Now, first of all, he's stealing my shtick.
Yeah.
I call people morons. I'm the only person who is allowed to assess who is a moron and who isn't on the internet. So actually, how fucking dare you? But then, like, literally, think about this. Like, just be quiet. Just let it blow over, mate. You don't need it. But he tweeted out, for morons, he came to work at a school. He was a wagon of experience to share with young players, because that means he has a wagon of experience. He brought young players to the major out of nothing. And if someone doesn't like it, you can go to the forest. For the rest who are ready to develop, join our school.
Straight fire. I bet that's some straight fire shit.
No, in Russia, that probably does mean, like, we're going to burn your house to the ground, fuck off, or something insane. Like, you'll have to live in the woods.
That's like saying you fucking hook.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Come on.
Yeah, that's a good one. Now, as someone who likes hiking, I like the forest. But anyway, I've never seen a CEO go on an offensive. I mean, a real CEO, not like everyone's a CEO in eSports, obviously. But like, this is a CEO of a supposedly credible organization that's attached to like several sizable leagues, and you're saying, like, if you don't like you hiring a cheater, you're morons. And consider this: the Hunden comparison, it's not even accurate. Hunden stayed at the org he was already hired by. Right? They made the decision to keep him around, which, remember, we criticised. We did the same for Ents as well. You waited until the fucking cheating scandal was over and you went, right?
Definitely cheated, right? Yeah. Right, bring him in.
Yeah. Guys, we need a coach for our academy side. Who's the biggest cheating cunt in the world right now? Right? Who is it? Well, that Zona guy. Perfect. Bring him in. So the idea that you're not worthy of some like additional criticism for doing that is so fucking it's mind-boggling. Then just to bring us up to speed, and then you can give your opinions, which will be tame, and I understand why. But they then decided, like, Thorin just retweeted like the insult they kind of aimed at me, saying like, look at the foot. Would you look at that? He did a James Banks. And they replied saying, don't allow yourself to be insulted by any clown journalist. He's done the fake journalist air quotes around me. Equals claim moral high ground. Hey, they don't violate in any way the penalties established by ESIC. Let's ban their main CSGO roster everywhere. Now, I understand what he's saying there. The point is that ESIC could only go so far, but it's like I said, it would be overreach if they started telling you who you can and can't employ. The point is, you shouldn't actively seek out a fucking massive degenerate cheating piece of shit and do a big fanfare about how great it is he's working.
All they had
in
to
your
do is hire him and then just not announce him. That's what's so puzzling.
I don't care. Yeah, if you want to keep him locked in a dark room, teaching the dark arts to the kids.
No, wait, I can give you an example. I can give you a very valid example of someone who did this. And believe it or not, are you going to add, this is going to make everyone clutch their pearls. TSM actually vaguely learned their lesson, because if people don't know, TSM secretly had that vague RV2 guy who was kicked out of Fnatic as an analyst because he'd made inappropriate jokes about someone's like little sister or something, like really outrageous jokes. Listen, jokes, but still not the sort of shit you'd ever want with your PR associated. Apparently years earlier, they brought him in to work with some of their players secretly off the books and never announced it. But I was told by sources, and all you need to know is this: during the off-season, Lustboy, who works with TSM, just basically was like, this guy's an amazing analyst. Will you give the game away there? But even so, you were smart enough not to make a fanfare about it, because if you make a big deal about it, it already carries the implication you think it's fine. And my point, they just missed the point entirely there. My point isn't even you can't hire him. It's like you can't hire him and then try and claim the moral high ground after hiring the guy who cheated the most. Like, by definition, you've got to at least cede the high ground.
Yeah.
Were you Anakin Skywalker or something?
Any additional thoughts, Monty, before I move us along to the next topic?
Look,
What about that HLTV guy? We need to get that guy.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I nearly let it slide.
Listen, people are confused. I'll set it up because you don't know these names. Like 10 people watch that podcast, right? It's not the one with the horse scums. It's not Chad. There we go. It's the other guy. There you go.
Right, it's Professor is who it is.
Oh, there we go.
And obviously, I know horse scums. I can't even deal with it. Look, when did Travis Gaffin start working for HLTV?
did fucking Travis Gaffin and Kate Schumer have a baby? Jesus.
Right, well, anyway, right now he's called Professor, and listen, like he's in that world now
Professor X, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, he's in that world where, like we were talking about off camera, the take machine, because you have to put opinions out there to be relevant. We all do it, right? So I'm not going to bang him on that. But his opinion sort of kind of stinks. Like
pure garbage,
which is fine. Like it's fine. It's given us content, so much love to you. Yeah, exactly. Thank you for your garbage opinion. It said Steele staying in the scene after match fixing and passing on his knowledge equals good, making up for his error. Zona staying in the scene after cheating and passing on his knowledge equals. And then hashtag hashtag controversial morning tweet.
We should actually co-op. We should co-op that hashtag.
Yes, we should fill that hashtag with way better shit than that.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I honestly believe we should start using that hashtag. It's pretty funny.
I'll start posting goatsies on it. That's what I'll start doing. We'll bring back the old internet.
Because maybe I can just take a moment to be serious. I'll take my role as the eSports historian here. Here's why, just using a basic chronological timeline and context, those aren't in any way comparable. Like, those are absolutely apples and oranges comparison. Also, think about this.
Yeah.
First of all, Steele definitely was not immediately hired by a big org publicly to work any role. In fact, when Steele got his ban, he lost a lucrative job as the main observer of fucking CSGO majors and massive tournaments. His last tournament before he got banned was one I was working at, was an MLG, and he was considered the premier observer because this is before Prius. He was way better than all of them. He basically set the standard, could have had a job doing that his whole career. Then he could have also been on analyst desk, wasn't allowed to do that. People will forget this. Once he was banned was early 2015. That was when CLG had just gotten that new team with Tarek and it wasn't JDM, it was fucking Peter and all those guys, FNS, right? If people don't remember, the story behind the scenes was initially after being banned, I think it was Dazed was like coaching, I think it was Cloud9, and Steele was doing CLG, like off the books. And basically, it was literally communicated to these guys, you can't even secretly have these guys coach. You must get rid of them. So then he went years and years as a streamer, just playing, basically did exactly what I said. The only guy didn't, which is pay your debt to society, take the time. And it was after the ESL and the other tournaments unbanned them, not Valve. Valve never unbanned them, but the other tournament said, we'll relax our bans. Then he came back to the competitive side in the team, obviously took over that one that Dazed was in, and then went on to great things. So, like, it couldn't be any more different, the two cases. And then, like you say, like, the angle of, like, why not just go straight forwards and just go equals bad? Why have you put that question mark, like, might get a bit saucy? Ooh, equals what?
It was a hashtag controversial morning tweet.
What absolutely slays me about this is that the concept of redemption only works in retrospect. That is the only way redemption can ever function in the world. And so unless
Jesus redeemed all of our sins.
Exactly. So I was about to say, unless Jesus Christ himself descends from heaven and absolves Zoner, only Jesus Christ can do that. So
there's your controversial morning tweet. There is. There you go. See you tomorrow.
Now, I am sure there are many fictitious deity characters that can also redeem him. I'm going to play it safe there.
Oh, okay.
I think as well, though, it's just a massive, like you say, a massive retconning of history. That was the thing I really took exception to. Because, as you said, like, Steele was absolutely reviled.
He's a pariah.
By the community. And many friends walked away from him. His mental health suffered. If you remember some of the streams, he wasn't well. You know, he was doing
depressed.
He was chronically depressed. He'd lost everything. And now, obviously, there is a price to be paid for your sins. Most people have come around to agreeing that for the crime, the punishment was disproportionate. That's where most people are at with it, and I think that's reasonable. But we could be there with Zona as well, maybe, but there's no contrition and seemingly no penalty whatsoever. Now, the final point I want to make, and this is why I think the professor's opinion there was absolute garbage, not just because it's a retconning of history. Let's think about this from a broader perspective. We know Valve are watching. I know they said they were going to wait for
That's my fear right there. Right there is that
well,
if Valve
jump in and
this,
take over the point.
if Valve sees this and they look at it and they're like, this isn't having the desired effect of punishing people. Guess who's going to come in with the big dick swinging around and actually just punish everybody in horrific ways just because they're seeing somebody who doesn't have this contrition, who's still getting opportunities in the scene. So those people who are affected by this ban, who truly want to redeem themselves and kind of lay low for a while, but maybe, still be employed so that they can live their lives. And frankly, some people made mistakes in this thing. And I would hope that there is, I always like to believe that there is a path to redemption for people, and people should be given second chances. And wouldn't it fucking suck, guys, if we lose some legitimately good coaches as part of this process who had made a shitty decision on a day or two, not 400 times, right? But a shitty decision on a day or two.
That's a detail people we missed in the story about their quote. They described it, Monty, as he made a mistake. He made 400 of them and then wasn't even sorry afterwards. Like, listen, I'm not saying if you rob one bank, you should go to prison for your entire life. Rob 400. You know what? You might be pushing it there, mate. At this point, I don't know if we can trust you around banks anymore. Like, give me a break.
But my fear about this whole thing is that if the worst offender is like publicly getting this fanfare and I'm Valve, I don't really want to set this precedent as part of my esport, just objectively, if I'm looking at this from their perspective. And so my fear is that this may result in some really heavy punishments because the scene doesn't seem to be self-regulating very well.
No.
Here's what I would love, though, is if Valve came out and made one of those statements. They always, listen, they themselves know about theatre. They never just come out like, we're making a statement. It's always just like a blog post with just like a vague title, like addressing the scene. And then you just have to go, ooh, what's in this one? You start reading it, right? I'd love it if they do that. And then obviously the CEO from ForZe just comes out, hey, Valve morons, when we hire someone, you can just go to the forest. See you in the forest.
So anyway,
I would like to listen. I would like to go to the Russian forest and ding, 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 just picking mushrooms. Not that kind, obviously.
I did that up in Banff. Saw the Aurora Borealis, or at least I thought I did. They got some fucking
reflection off the dome.
Yeah, they got some fucking banging mushrooms up there. Anyway, and nice forests. Anyway,
and maybe nice Aurora Borealis. Who knows if they were real?
Who knows? Who knows? I was watching it with the blue people. They told me it was real, so whatever. Right. Anyway, you can see ForZe in action at the next season of Flashpoint.
That joke was even a good one. Now there's a reason for people to watch, just to hate watch them and hope they lose. I'll be right there cheering.
That said, like, what from my perspective with ForZe, they had a great qualification for our event. They are a team on the up and up.
That's nothing with players, of course. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and like we don't want to punish the players for like the Twitter accounts or management decisions. And I do think that what's unfortunate here is their current coach being absolved of the actual violations upon the appeal. So there's something very positive happening here as well. And credit to ESIC for really investigating that, going back, taking a look, reversing their decision. So there's a lot to like about ForZe right now too. But I do think that this was a it's not even the move. Like the move itself is questionable, but the announcement is just mind-boggling to me.
I didn't even look at this before I come on the show. I really should have thought about this because this could have been a delicious. If it happened, it would be too perfect. But obviously, Zona was the coach for Hard Legion, and they were playing teams in that CIS region.
They must have played ForZe. Yeah.
No, but could you imagine if he'd actually used the bug against ForZe, and now those players see him getting hired by the org? So the players might very much be on our side. Like I don't have the games to hand. But yeah, I agree. You've got to remember, you can dislike ForZe as much as you want based on the management. But yeah, the vitriol shouldn't drip down to the players. They've done fuck all. And I haven't checked, but could just as easily have been victims. of this guy's actions. So, right, last topic before we get into viewer questions, and it's another one fraught with peril, guys. Right? Because I know you guys have got working relationships with people over at Cloud9, so it's okay if you want me to go hard in the paint and you guys want to throw up little platitudes and sensible stuff. It's fine. I won't hold it.
Technically, I told these guys to fire these guys years ago. So
well, yeah,
not for this reason, but eventually they listen to me.
So basically, they still had the old team before they built the Colossus with Henry G and Kassad and all of those boys. They still had the players from the old South African NA mixed team version of Cloud9 that didn't do too well. They still had them on the books, and they were still living in a team house, waiting for their contracts to expire. Then, sort of suddenly, in the middle of the night, I think on the 25th, I think it was, so like 2 days ago, it was just announced on Twitter that all their contracts were terminated because they had violated COVID-19 policies implemented by Cloud9 in terms of having visitors over at the house. Now, this means that because their contracts are terminated, their visas are terminated, and they will have to travel back to South Africa within 30 days. And I'll add as well that OC doesn't live in the house, so he's the only one whose contract hasn't been terminated. So a few details. Apparently, this is the second time they'd violated COVID-19 policy. We can presume having friends over, maybe to have a drink, maybe to hang out. But I was very surprised by the community reaction to this. I thought
they got it right for once.
Well, I don't know. We might be about to disagree. I don't know. But so the community were like, listen, follow the rules. You don't get your contract terminated and you don't get fucking, kicked back to South Africa during a global pandemic. But for me, like, I don't know what happened after the first time. I think, like, the contract termination looks incredibly convenient to me.
You
like,
to save money.
Yeah, they've obviously been hovering over the get rid of these cunts button, for a while, because why pay players you're not going to use,
Because you want to sell them. So, like, the other side of this that people, I think, don't consider here is that, sure, they have to pay out the rest of the contract, but also by releasing them from those contracts, then they can no longer sell the players to another team, right? So they actually do. It's not like it's, we got off scot-free. I promise you they were trying to sell those contracts, right?
Yeah, sure. And listen, I know they got a written warning for the first time they violated it. But do you not go to a fine next, like, dock them a month's pay, 3 months pay, whatever it is? Like, it just seems to me like, okay, so maybe I'm, like, being too much of a pussy here, like, which would be incredible if that was true. If I was the pussified one, like, that's mad. But, it seems to me like they're going to have to travel internationally now, just as we're getting the winter spike of coronavirus. It's 30 days. It's not a lot of time. Speaking to someone who had to do it recently myself, 30 days is not a lot of time to figure out how you're getting your shit back home, where you're going to live. You've got to find a place in a foreign country you can't visit, right? You have to do it all over the phone. People walking around doing virtual tours on your fucking iPhone and shit like that. And obviously, you're putting the players at risk of contracting coronavirus. If we can't travel to events, why is it okay to kick people out of a team house and have them travel internationally because you want to get rid of them? So for me, I thought, like, this is a bit fucking DEFCON 1. I would probably just, like, find them, maybe even tell them, like, you violated it, so, we're going to keep your contracts running, but we're not going to pay you. Like, you got to now figure out how the fuck you're going to get back. Put them on notice, sure, but, like, this felt like perhaps a tad egregious and predicated on
I'm going to go the other way on this.
So,
right, okay.
so
I'm going to go the other way.
Hold on. So let me explain how Cloud9 has been operating during this pandemic, because I used to work for them, obviously, and I actually have a lot of insight into this. Okay. So how Cloud9 works is they have separate houses for League of Legends and CSGO. And typically, like pre-pandemic, these houses are very close to each other. And so, like, the CSGO and the League players will have the same catering. Like, the CSGO players will go to the League house, they'll eat together, and they, they're nice houses. They get
wait that second.
They get all the, made.
Wait that sec. I think you like it.
We'll catch back up.
Just because we missed some of that sentence there, so you just give you a chance to.
You dropped out on having the same caterers.
There you go. I think you're back now. There you go.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah, so they live close together, and so they'd have meals together because, like, the CSGO, they cater for in the League of Legends house. The CSGO players would work out with the League of Legends players. They'd have the trainer coming every day. So this is like pre-pandemic, right? So the houses are very close. Now, C9 went into full lockdown before Los Angeles went into lockdown, anything like that. Jack was very adamant about it. And you can have your opinions about whether Jack's safety precautions, you agree with them or not. But it was extremely clear to everybody within C9. They immediately separated the two teams. In fact, they moved the house cleaners into the League of Legends house to clean the League of Legends house. And they had a separate house that was supposed to be for another division, like another team, that they were using just to run the LCS games as like a change of environment to like mentally reset their players. So they had, and then they completely isolated the CSGO house. So they were not interacting any longer, right?
Yeah.
And so the thing is that Jack and C9 took this so seriously that everyone from the outside was banned from entering those houses, including C9's own content production team, unless they were literally living inside the house. And in order to get one of them into one of the houses, they would have to quarantine in a separate apartment rented by C9
As in, you weren't allowed in either, right? When you were working in content.
Correct.
Right,
they told me
right.
I am no longer allowed to go to the houses. So even if you were in the content team working for C9, you had to quarantine in a C9 rented apartment for 2 weeks before you were allowed to like enter the houses to film that content. So let me just put it this way. It was very, very obvious, and it was very clear from the organization what the rules were, and no one was getting in and out or out of those houses. And if someone was allowed in, there was a process that took weeks in order to get that person in contact with the teams, because Jack and the rest of Cloud9 were so serious about making sure that the players really weren't infected and that there wasn't any kind of transmission. So it was super serious. So when you look at the severity of this, I think it's important to realize like how seriously Cloud9 treated this and how obvious that was to everybody surrounding the organization and within the organization. And so knowing that, in my mind, like, them even getting a second chance, because it wasn't like, oh, you know, you just had your mates over or whatever. It was so fucking clear, like what the boundaries were, that I think it, you know, it is, you know, when they said, oh, here's a warning for the first time, it's surprising to me that they even gave them that warning, because of this was like already like maximum, you know, red alert from C9. And so I'm sure when that first time happened, and they said they issued them like a verbal and a written warning, to me, it couldn't have been more clear. From being inside that organization, it was very, 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 very clear.
And I'm definitely back and forth on it. I mean, like, so I'm looking at it from the viewpoint of, do you remember when that fucking Rockets player snuck a woman into the NBA bubble?
Yes.
And it wasn't even his wife, so it was a double massive.
Yes, he got wrecked.
Yeah, he's been absolutely fucking
His wife even
destroyed.
posted some shit on like Instagram, like
but you know, he got suspended for one game. You know, and it's like, listen, if they were all American and they didn't have to travel internationally, I don't think I'd give a fuck. It's just the contextual issue of them having to travel back to South Africa. And I haven't even looked at what their COVID stats are like. I mean,
I can tell you from traveling from LAX right now, the whole airport was empty, and so was my plane. So I felt relatively safe.
Yeah, that's also true. We did say that at the start of the show.
Like, I know what I won't say you're biased in the sense, but put it this way, I think you have an extra sensitivity to this because you yourself were in a situation where you had a visa running out, couldn't renew it,
subconscious bias
to travel during all this to the UK. So I'm sure you can empathize with these people. You understand that like they were in a tough situation. But like, first of all, like you said, technically, the fact that they're from South Africa is neither here nor there. Like, I mean, Aussie isn't. He's not punished, but you know, like the ones who aren't from South Africa just stay wherever they stay. If they live in LA, whatever, you know.
MOTM.
He's American.
It's basically JT, Sonic, and TC the coach. So three of them will go back to South Africa. Secondly, even though I agree with you, obviously it sucks that they have to go back now. If they were going back in a month, it ain't going to be over in a month. So they were going back anyway during that. So I'm not sure that that's like the most pressing angle. And then I'll also say that you're doing it from the perspective of if you're Jack and you're trying to be the coolest guy ever, right? You're trying to be as charitable as possible. I'll just say it this way. First of all, I think that's appropriate for the first instance. Maybe then I can go like, listen, fucked it up. I'm going to tell you this once. If you get fired, you have to go back to South Africa. You lose your visa. So you've done it once. I already told you not to do it that way, but don't do it 2 times. The second time, The problem with this scenario is we're taking it as an absolute that, like, right, they did it twice. If someone does something twice and fucks up on that level, I don't trust you that you won't do it a third and fourth time. Like, if I let you stay, I'm now responsible for you doing it a third, fourth, and fifth time. And so
there's also like
there's one other angle, which is that I would just say this. In that scenario, right, we're only thinking of like the perspective of what we know now. Imagine, right, someone writes a story about this in LA, because that's where these guys are based. A place where, by the way, California already is a nightmare for those stories. Like, it's the worst, like, hate click central for all that shit, like numbers. Imagine the story comes out that not only did you let them like flout all the conventions you put in place and didn't fire them over it, even though it turns out you had a clause. But even worse, what PR would it be if one of them actually then tested positive for coronavirus?
Yes. Or and got seriously ill.
Even worse, imagine the world where all of them test for it. Yeah. Now, at that point, it was the PR hit to you, even into you could even add to Flashpoint, so it would be terrible. Now, listen, if I go from the player's perspective, they were trapped in LA for all this time. They couldn't go home. They're not in a team anymore. I'm sure you think, well, fucking hell, do I have to follow all these things? I'm not even in the team anymore. In fact, I haven't got a career right now. In fact, I was already going to probably have to go to South Africa anyway because I'm not really getting picked up by anyone. This is just shit. Can I have my mates over? I get that angle. That's like a young man's mistake. But like, basically, this is one of those scenarios where, in my opinion, there's no perfect solution that makes it work for everyone. Like, someone's going to have to take a hit, unfortunately. Listen, I'm not making any judgments on like the severity of the case. I'm just saying I can see from the C9 perspective why you might just say, I'm just done with this. Like, just end it now.
Yeah, and just one other little aspect of the story was that when they were wishing sort of farewell and good luck, you know, Sonic, like Jack left Sonic's name out of the farewells and good luck. Now,
you think that was like a subtle shot across the bow?
I think almost certainly it was a way. JacKz experience.
He was being shrewd there.
Yeah, like a pretty intentional omission, right?
Yeah, like JacKz not no fool, you know. So I think I don't like that. I don't like now that the community can craft the narrative that it was all Sonic's fault.
Oh, that's a bit dirty, sure. But
yeah, even if it was. Like, ultimately, like, they've been cut. We don't need to know any of the sordid details. And listen, I also agree with you guys. Like, it would be absolutely disastrous if there was, like, a sudden outbreak around, you know, Cloud9 staff or whatever, you know, especially with everything that's going on with the new team. And then it goes to Flashpoint, and then it impacts on you guys, right? So I do get it. I do get the severity of it all. But equally as well, it's like, I don't know, it feels like, you're probably right. I've got a subconscious bias because I've been through something similar myself.
I get it.
Yeah. So that's probably where I'm at, actually.
It also sucks, but I think it's really important to understand how clear the messaging was around all of this from Cloud9 and the circumstances that they exist in as an organization, because it wasn't, in my mind, it really wasn't, there's no way you could have misinterpreted what the regulations were in the first place.
Yeah,
so
that's
the
one
fact
thing
that they violated it twice is kind of mind-boggling.
That's also why when the story was initially announced and there wasn't that many details, I actually wondered if it would go the other way, because the way the story initially sounded was, like you said initially, like the cynical take, which is, if this was Astralis, I would assume that was what it was, which is, it sounded like they just were like, is there any clause we could invoke in the contract to not pay them? Like, yeah, if they'd done that angle, that's shady as fuck. But like, yeah, I don't know the way that this one went. Like, I feel like this was a bit rough the way, but I think everyone was going to be in trouble. Here's the thing, though. The reason I can relate with the Cloud9 side is because I also have trust issues. Like, you know what? That Carmack guy talked shit about me on Excess Reality in 2001. I forgave him. I was the bigger man 10 years later. Then I forgave him for getting mad at me for talking shit about all his country at that event. And then I thought, listen, Carmack, 3 strikes and you're out. So I understand being betrayed and not being able to trust anyone anymore.
Well, we're going to go from betrayal straight into the viewership questions.
Which often do involve betrayal.
Yeah, they're at it again.
Oh boy. I'm going to go get a glass of wine for this one. Hold on.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no worries. Well, I'll hold back, actually, while he gets his wine. Sam, any updates on the bot major that people need to know about while we're waiting for Monty to get some wine?
Have ForZe been tweeting?
We're making like side content, so shall I say what we're making?
Well, yeah, okay. So I'll just tease it. Right, what we decided we wanted to do was, because of the major, you have those Valve player profiles. We wanted to make like deep fake player profiles, like they're real, but obviously short and revolved around the theme that these are robotic recreations of the players. So I've looked at some of the scripts we've got. There is potentially one about NiKo that may or may not be funny. We'll wait and see. But yeah, we're working on like ancillary shoulder content as well. So to break up the monotony of watching bot games for 2 weeks, we are going to have also fake interviews on top of that. Like, yeah, this might be the most stupid thing I've ever done.
I've gone all in, mate. I've gone all in.
It might be the biggest waste of time ever because day one, no majors come back, bot games, by like day 7, oh, fucking hell, this again. Like
I'm already looking at a way to simulate the matches. So if we reach a point where we're like, you know what, Football Manager style simulate result, maybe we can just do that to a bunch of best of ones.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, there's actually an update on the ForZe story. I've just seen it. An hour ago, right? Obviously, some fan of me or you has said that he said the fact you call Richard Lewis a journalist says everything anyone ever needed to know about your organization. In 2016, Lewis was awarded the eSports Journalist of the Year award by the Esports Industry Awards. In 2019, Lewis won the award a second time. Their response is amazing because they still don't get it. Where they respond and go, great. The Journalist of the Year doesn't even need to be able to read. And then they quote, right? Are you ready? I'm going to read their statement.
I am functionally illiterate. That's my
is
dark
amazing.
secret.
Are you ready? It goes, for the duration of the bans, the coaches will not be able to be physically present around the team starting 15 minutes before a match is scheduled to begin up until it ends and will not be able to communicate actively or passively with the players for the same period of time. Right? I'll ignore the rest of it, right? You get the gist of it. Here's the problem with that, ForZe. You just saying it won't happen would involve us trusting you. How could we trust you after this? And also, you have shown no contrition for the fact that it's done. You still don't get it. You still think you have the moral high ground. Guess what? I don't trust you. And I don't need to. I'm not obliged to, believe it or not.
So it's appropriate that you got wine, Monty, because AliceTheAlchemist asked the first viewer question, as he often does. And it says, since Thorin has often referred to himself as the Jesus Christ of
What
esports,
is this theme today?
I know. It turns out he has now done it often. It's official. What would be a perfect Last Supper meal that he would wish to have before being enshrined into the pantheon of esports? For Richard and Monte, what would your perfect Last Supper meal be?
I think you're skipping the step where he was brutally tortured and murdered prior to being enshrined in the pantheon.
Looking forward to that bit, actually.
To be fair, Reddit's sort of the psychic spiritual equivalent of that, of the Passion of the Christ. Anyways,
I feel like there was some really horrific time in there that was just glossed over.
So yeah, basically, I mean, it's a slightly more depressing question for me and Monty, because obviously if you were being executed, what would your last meal be? Essentially, we don't get the benefit of being Jesus. So what would it be, Duncan? What would your last meal essentially be?
Well, the thing is, I would actually not necessarily pick it by like my absolute favorite thing, but I would just go with something like Korean barbecue. So I want something consistent. If it's my last meal ever, listen, the last way I want to go out is order something and go, nah, this is fucking shit. And then I'm just complaining on my way to being hung or whatever the fuck. Like, so
you would also complain on your way to being hung.
Imagine that, like, bloody hell.
Actually, the name of the first chapter of my memoirs of my life growing up as a young boy. Complaining on the way to being hung. Yeah. So, there we go.
I saw it.
All right, fair enough. Okay.
Monty, what would your last meal be?
Wasn't a gun in my pocket, and I wasn't happy to see it.
Well,
what would yours be, Monty?
I feel like I just would skip the meal and just go straight for the alcohol.
You're not allowed.
Just skip the meal, go straight to death. Just give me death.
If it is an execution scenario, of course, you wouldn't be allowed it.
That's incredibly lame, by the way.
Yeah, that's whack.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Maybe they think you're gonna get fucking juiced up, like on the fucking, on the Jesus juice, hulk up and break free. Like, I don't know. Maybe that's actually happened at some point. Like, that moonshine's pretty potent. They've got in Alabama.
See, I feel like this is a trick question because I agree with Duncan. If you're on death row, I don't understand why we went to the Last Supper angle. You could have just been like, if you were a serial killer and we're on death row. So the consistency is pretty important because like you don't want to order a steak and then have it be fucked up, right? Because that would be a pretty, getting a nice ribeye would be probably a pretty great choice. So that's why I would go
with that.
I would go more for the alcohol angle because if I can order like a specific bottle of whiskey, then I'm insured of the quality of that thing, right? And I don't want to die sober. No way.
That's also.
By the way, I think he's really he's confused his metaphors, right? Jesus' Last Supper was actually about like his ministry. He wasn't just like, guys, I'm getting killed tomorrow, so get me some of that banging
No,
bread.
to be fair,
To be fair, we also know the Last Supper, everybody was drunk. So
also
theoretically, if we're going by the Last Supper, you know those guys were partying hard that night, 100%. So they had some good wine. Good wine would be excellent.
For me, I mean, see, now that Monty's brought booze to the table, like, I mean, fucking hell. Like, yeah, I'm probably the same. I'd like to drink a bottle of scotch. Then again, that's just like another day at the moment in quarantine. It wouldn't be like a special occasion.
It would be because you'd be with your friends.
Oh yeah, actually, yeah, exactly. That's true. I would have company. So yeah, it'd be good. So I don't know. I'm trying to think, like, because I do like the steak option as well. You know what? Now that you have said it, like, yeah,
nice Birmingham curry.
Yeah, I could go for a Sally Botty, like. That's pretty banging.
All right, what's that euphemism for?
I just wanted to say Sally Botty because it's an obscure curry and it's got a funny name. But yeah, that'd be good actually. Yeah, just a giant, Indian feast, I suppose. I'll go for that. So thanks for the question. GamingPoleDK. American Football's Hall of Fame is at Canton, Ohio. Where would you place an equivalent Hall of Fame for all of esports and in particular for Counter-Strike?
I feel like it should be different for the different esports, surely. Because, like, for example, like StarCraft has to be Korea or something.
Yeah, Seoul would have to.
Here's the thing. Like, sadly, this is why I don't want there to be one. I know in Counter-Strike, they'd just put it in fucking Katowice, wouldn't they? Which would be like their trick. Like, if I ever get enshrined, I have to go there, then don't I? By the way, you know what? Since it's never going to actually happen, I'll tell them the story, Monty, because this is actually straight fire. One of the ideas that Monty and Dan from Cloud9 actually had when we were going to launch Flashpoint, because part of it was that we're going to be bold. We're not just going to come out and go, we're just a new little tournament. We're going to go head-to-head with ESL. We're going to show them, like, yeah, we're on the scene as well. So their idea was I would finally make my return, like the fucking Rock to New York City, to Katowice. And we were going to have the press conference in that salt mine that's right there. And have it, and I'd just fly in. And I was even planning on saying some mad shit at the press conference, like, I'm fucking back or whatever, just I run this town or something like Conor McGregor style.
So first off, it was a great idea. And second off, for the context, for people who don't know, outside of Krakow, so Katowice is also outside of Krakow, but there is a salt mine that has been there for like 1,000 years. And inside the salt mine, I've been there. It's actually super cool. There is like a cathedral carved out of salt where we could have theoretically held a press conference if we had paid for it.
God.
And being in a chapel of salt to announce Flashpoint would have been just like fucking beautiful.
If people don't know, I think it's that one that's in that legendary clip where like everyone always links it in League of Legends. Like, down here, salt is a way of life. You know that one that the guy just says that like insanely memeable line in just some like documentary or something like. I think it was that one. That would have been straight fire though.
Anyway, we can still hold.
My dream, obviously, then is just like Carmack's just sat back and just watching like Twitch.
But the thing is, though, mate, like you can't take the risks. Like,
it would be unreasonable.
We're getting so close to like critical mass where, like, I think me and you have had probably like our 9 lives in terms of like fatal fan interactions, like just some demented fan coming to get us. Like, so.
Look, I'm just saying that, in the future, if we can hold an entire Flashpoint in the salt mine, I'm not averse to that. Or hold the finals in the salt cathedral. I think it's really in keeping with the brand and the banter, and we can bring up all the salty moments, insane sponsorship, insane synergy with our content.
And Waxix trying to clutch up, but he can't get the salt out his eyes. He keeps blinking. He's fucking. There's some logistical problems there, I think, as well. Thanks for the question, GamingPoleDK. Jerckysminion asks, has there ever been a better father figure than Al Bundy? This is obviously Al Bundy from Married with Children. This is how you know when it's like the boomer section of the audience is in, because then the Zoomers are not going to know anything that's going on here. So just for the rest of the question, you must have watched Married with Children at some point, which no one does anymore, by the way. Great series, though. Al Bundy, the legendary quarterback who scored 4 touchdowns in a single game for the Polk High School Panthers in the 1966 City Championship game versus Andrew Johnson High School, including the game-winning touchdown in the final seconds against his old nemesis, Bubba Spare Tire Dixon. I'll just answer it quickly, Jerky, because that's the maddest question that's ever been asked on the show. I don't think there actually has been a better father figure. You win. You're right.
Oh, by the way, the real answer to the question before, I think for Counter-Strike is the Hall of Fame should be in Sweden.
Oh yeah,
in
we
my
didn't
opinion.
even answer it. Yeah,
Sweden is the greatest nation ever in the history of the game. It should be there.
Yeah, for Counter-Strike, sure. I mean, maybe not Jönköping though.
I'd go for Stockholm, exactly. Yeah,
yeah, maybe not Jönköping. It's like to get to the Hall of Fame, you have to go on a 3-hour bus journey.
The thing about that question is that there isn't like a sports Hall of Fame. It's the football Hall of Fame that's in Canton, right?
Yeah,
so you would have to pick the Counter-Strike Hall of Fame. For most Hall of Fames, the answer is probably in Seoul, I would say, for most other esports. I mean, RTS, MOBA, any of that kind of stuff. But
yeah, I think if you were doing just a general one, like Seoul would be an amazing shout for it, obviously, because, you know, Koreans have been ubiquitous now across multiple esports, had champions in multiple esports. You know, it's like, would be hard to deny that as a claim. Right. Reykjavikonsteam asks, is the Forza situation what would normally be called a slight misjudgment? Yeah, I think so. The weird thing is, though, I'll just as a serious point, it must be super frustrating if you're like a player or like, I don't know, social media manager or like a content creator, and you've got to wear that badge and they're your employers, and then you see like the CEO, you know, managers out there fucking shit up like this, and like, you know, because communities don't understand nuance by and large. You know, you are going to get caught up in the crossfire, and it must be super frustrating. So I think it's a misjudgment because up until this point, Forza had a pretty good reputation. They were well liked. They were an up-and-coming team. They were like, you know, sleeper.
Underdog story,
yeah, underdog, like, you know, getting to finals like Copenhagen Games, I think it was, and stuff like this. So yeah, it's really, really silly. It's like just it is a miscalculation, I think.
All right, by the way, the problem is fans can't separate them out. Like famously, League of Legends social media manager always just say, like, please stop tweeting at me about the draft. Like,
yeah, I know.
I can't make them pick a different champion. I'm just the social media manager.
It is ridiculous. So Watch Doge said to read this first.
No, I put that. You should read it to yourself first.
All right. So, and this did make me laugh, and it's probably stupid to say it, but whatever. What would be a better politics and gaming crossover? This is, of course, referring to AOC in the recent Among Us stream. Would it be Kamala playing Papers, Please? Or Joe playing Amnesia?
Well done, well crafted joke.
That's very funny.
That is a very funny joke, Watch Doge. I actually approve of this message. So whether or not it'll make the VOD, I don't know.
The only appropriate game for any of them to play would be fucking Deus Ex.
Not bad.
There's a lot in that game. It's all Metal Gear Solid 2. Take your pick. There's a lot in those games.
So thanks for that. Carv. One aimed specifically at Thorin. Over the past few weeks, has it been more personally enjoyable dunking on TSM fans for being trash, or dunking on Astralis fans for being gullible NPCs? But he did a clever little play on words, so it was Den NPCs, like Denmark.
Right. The thing is, like, TSM's just a classic, isn't it? You know, you can just always go back to that well. It'll never run dry. Obviously, it's also just hilarious that they always fail. Like, they've just failed so many times. Like, I almost for a second do. Like, here's the thing. If I actually do think about the individual players in their careers, I do feel sorry for them. I think it's actually tragic what's happened to their careers. But then I just remember they're wearing a TSM jersey and that they hang around Reginald, say he's a good guy. So I go, fuck him. Just put him in the fire with the rest of them. You know, slam the door behind him, fucking put the latch on. No, because the problem with the Astralis one is we'll never get our satisfaction off that. Like I said, we were proven right on every single strand, including, by the way, ones we were only speculating about that we didn't know for a fact. It's like I said, it's almost like we manifested it to come into reality. And at the end of it all, people just did that thing where they've moved the goalposts and done mental gymnastics so much they're like, so do you have to go on about it then? Like, you know what I mean? You never get the win. You're never allowed the win from these people.
Yeah, it's the same thing with TSM, though. It's the same thing with TSM. We were proven right on an unprovable conflict of interest, which I said when it was the time. It was like a 1 in 1,000 chance of actually leaking any kind of evidence, and we somehow got it. It was a fucking miracle. And even with that evidence, people are still in absolute denial over it. It's insane.
Also, by the way, listen, I did my usual. You know, I performed up to par. I know what I would have pleased the audience, but I can't lie. As much as them going 0-6 was funny, my actual dream was that, like, they just lost to Team Liquid and that Jensen directly beat them in the playoffs, because that would have been absolutely unbearable if that happened. Because, by the way, I had everything primed. Like, I had all I was going to do this thing where what they do in League of Legends, and they fucked themselves doing this, is when it was like 2015, right? If I brought up anything from 2012, they'd go, that's bloody years ago. Stop going on about that. Well, it had been 3 years basically since they'd won anything. So I was going to go, we'll just start the timeline for Bjergsen. And here, he's got 0 championships, guys. And Jensen's got like 3, he's been to Worlds. Like, I would have basically crafted, just for joke purposes, like the most uncharitable comparison ever, where it would have just triggered them off the face of the planet. So I never quite got that satisfaction, but whatever. Maybe one day.
This is a strange one, but I appreciate it. So this is from RezChi. What do you guys think are the chances of Everton and Aston Villa remaining in the top 4 of the Premier League? Now, I did actually talk about football back when I was doing my Ricardo Castro Football Manager Extraordinaire streams. Which is like for me, Monty, that's like your Crusader Kings stream, basically. I was
actually playing Crusader Kings right before we did this.
Yeah, like it's like basically that's what I'm known for. There's a subset of people who don't know eSports. What the fuck's that? Journalism? No, they think I'm a football manager streamer. You know? So anyway, I did say that I thought Everton were going to be the most improved side. So I made a few bold predictions. I said that Everton were going to be the most improved side this year. That looks to be true. And I said that I think Leeds will finish mid-table. That's coming along nicely. Aston Villa's a big surprise to me. I don't think they're going to be, keeping up this form as we get deep into the season. Everton, I can't see them getting top 4, but realistically, with the squad they've got now and the way they're playing, top 6 on the cards for me. So. I think top 4 is such a big ask, and you have to expect that some of the big teams that have been dropping points are going to kick into a high gear. Like right now, like it's City aren't going to stay this bad for an entire season. I say bad, mediocre, whatever the fuck you want to call it. Liverpool, I've had some uncharacteristic fuck ups. So I think the top 4 essentially at the end will look much like it did last season. I don't think there's been any seismic changes. I'm sick of Arsenal fans already into the season, and Newcastle will remain mid-table mediocrity non-factors. So
here's the thing.
Yeah,
I don't watch. I even call it soccer now because I've just spent too much time around Americans. But I don't, I don't talk to anyone from England, except for Richard. So I don't call it football. I just call it soccer, right? Because I actually watch the NFL now. I've actually become everything I would have hated 10 years ago. But whatever.
We always do.
It's the journey of life in many ways, isn't it? From a young man to an old man. Volume 2 of my memoirs. No, and so here's the problem, right? Since I can't answer the question seriously, I will revert to humour. So what I'll say is this. I don't actually know how good Aston Villa or Everton are, but I will say I hope Everton do well because they do have my favourite pitch. Not Goodison Park. That one,
he's done a joke about Scousers. Yeah, not bad.
I understand when you come from my area and are just smoggy scum. Scousers are about all you get. There's Scousers in the Glaswegians. It's about all you've got left on the totem below you at that point. They rob slightly more than us, and they're also scum.
Yeah, well, listen, I'll give you the Mackhams as well. You can have the Mackhams as well. You can have,
probably we hate them, so
yeah, you can mock the Mackhams. That's fine. So there you go. Echo, it's just a strange question. Basically asks, would you rather be a fan of Joe Biden or Gowles? So I don't even really know.
Gowles is a legend.
Yeah, so I think what you'll find is that both of them are going to be sticking around for the next few years. So it doesn't really matter whether you're a fan or not. Alon asks, and this is actually the last question, so we got off lightly this time. How can you develop a CS scene? Here in Israel, there is just nothing. Our best player is in Endpoint, for Christ's sake. What could be done to help the scene grow? Now, it's sad, actually, because Israel used to have an international traveling team called Israel that used to compete in 1.6 and then later in Source. And they used to go to international events. Now, obviously, they weren't like a huge competitor, but like other teams in the past, they added a nice kind of like a bit of diversity to a landscape, and they offered a unique play style. It was sort of like we made Fox back in 1.6 as well. There were Koreans, that you didn't see a lot of Koreans in FPS games, and occasionally they'd turn up and have like a stellar tournament, but for the most part, they would be like out in the groups or whatever. So when it comes to developing a scene, first of all, it's hugely important that you have just a sort of generic interest in the game at a base level. Now, I don't know enough about the current landscape in Israel and whether or not CS is considered like a taboo game because of its, terrorism theme. I know that does come up in some countries as being an issue. Germany's one of them, for example. So it doesn't get that broad popularity because you're told sort of stay away from it, don't play it. It's a bit fucked up, a bit weird. But what you need is like esports development is essentially a pyramid, so you can all start spamming the Illuminati thing in the chat. You've got to have loads of players rushing in and playing the game on a casual level, so you eventually build up the filters. You get your Babby's First League, like used to be an Enemy Down in the UK, and then you get into the good tournaments and the invites, and then you have pickup games where the pros are playing, and then eventually you filter on upwards and you start assembling groups of 5 players good enough to go and compete internationally. Now, if you don't have the base, you can never have the peak. And what you see in a lot of countries, unfortunately, is there's just not a broad enough interest in the game itself to even think about putting structure or sponsors or anything else in place. So I don't know how many people are playing Counter-Strike in Israel right now, but for example, we've seen a huge uptick in Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, those kind of regions.
So there's a couple of things that I think are interesting here. First off, if you want to watch Israeli players, well, Spinks is in contact now. And so in my mind, we actually are seeing Israeli players in Endpoint or in contact who are up-and-comers, right? Which for a very small scene is kind of unusual, right? The second part of it is that as you just mentioned, and I was going to talk about this as well, is that the esports scene is developing very rapidly in Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates and other Middle Eastern countries. Unfortunately, I don't think they're going to be super keen on perhaps having Israeli competition in those tournaments for various geopolitical reasons, which is a bummer because you would think that the regional competition would be potentially supercharge those scenes. Now, I don't know enough about whether the Israeli players or teams are allowed in those events, but for the last couple of years, there's been an increasingly large number of Middle Eastern players, and especially interests, obviously, some more, I would say, wholesome than others from the governments of those countries. But we're going to continue to see that develop because if there's one thing we can say about many of these Middle Eastern nations is that their eyes are firmly planted on the future and they see esports as a major opportunity. And I can tell you this from private knowledge that I have behind the scenes of, the governments of obviously not just Saudi Arabia, but we've seen Blast hold events now in Saudi Arabia. We've seen DreamHack, I think, in Dubai. So these events are going to continue happening. And because of the way the Middle Eastern government works, they're going to keep sponsoring these events and they're going to keep pouring money into it. But there's been a lot of regional and local competition. It's also really hot there. And so playing video games inside is probably one of the more pleasant activities that you can do, in the same way that if I'm in the middle of winter in Sweden, I probably don't want to go outside and would be rather playing CS, right? So I think we are going to see, this is all to say that because of the government interest, because of the local tournaments that have been taking place in the Middle East in general, I anticipate that we're going to see significant growth in the next few years, and we're probably going to see some pretty fucking good players coming out of that region. So I hope Israel can be a part of that.
There was actually a little bit of drama at the start of the year in the Asia Minor qualifier that we covered on the podcast.
Yes.
If people remember this, it was between a team called Camel Riders, who I believe are predominantly from Jordan. I think they're a Jordanian
Sounds
team.
about it.
Yeah, and they played against a team called Equus that were Israeli. And for the qualifier, they were told that they had to play like one map on one server and then one map on another server. So the geography kept shifting around to try and make it fair for the ping differential. And there was a bit of drama that came up because Camel Riders refused on the deciding map. It was like a best of 5 or something. They refused to move to a more neutral server, so both would have a bad ping, and the Israeli players had to play on like 195 ping, is what they said in the tweet, and they were like super pissed off about it and saying like if it wasn't an Israeli team, you wouldn't be doing it. There was a little bit of that there.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, it is like traditionally the Israeli CS teams as well always played in Europe. They always played in like the European qualifiers and went to European tournaments, but like the world's getting bigger now, like a lot of these. This sounds a bit lofty, so I apologize for ending the podcast on such a wanky, pretentious, kind of train of thought. But one of the things that I've always liked about esports is that because it's predominantly played by the younger generation and it exists in digital spaces, one of the great things about it is that you can check all that baggage at the door.
Yes.
We all love that about it,
Yeah, you don't have to bring your geopolitics. Like, let the fucking boomers hang on to that shit. Let your governments hang on to that shit. Like, it doesn't need to be here. It doesn't need to be in our space. And one of the great things, I've seen in the past is seeing, like, Israeli competitors, competing against like Arab nations and that sort of thing, and that was a nice thing to see. That was a welcome addition to the scene, and
And this is something that I'm just very passionate about in esports in general, and I've spoke about many times. One of the things that attracted me to esports in the early days was because I could have in Warcraft 3 in 2004 regular contact and interaction with people from different cultures. From, when I was casting these leagues or managing teams, we would be talking to Koreans and Chinese players and Europeans. And for me, it was kind of a gateway into the broader world. And it has resulted in my personal life in extraordinary amounts of travel, living in different countries. I've lived on, 3 different continents over the course of my life. And I think it's a really amazing force for kind of global understanding and good. And I hope that continues.
Yeah, same for me. When I grew up as a young boy, I started to talk to Americans. We were able to put the whole Revolutionary War behind us. No hard feelings anymore.
Anyway, look, it's been a great episode. Those are all of you with questions. So just a final shout out to, well, first of all, thank Monty, of course, for giving up his time. He's in quarantine prison. He had nothing to do. But I will thank him.
It was a great time. It was a great time. Nice to catch up with you guys.
Yeah, it's always nice, man. Don't be a stranger. If you want to come on by the numbers again,
anytime. You ask me anytime, I'll come on.
And indeed, the No Majors Club. You got to get a taste of that. You haven't been involved. It's going to be straight after Flashpoint when you're exhausted.
Sounds great. Love it.
Come and watch some bot games.
I would love to. That sounds really fun.
And obviously, thanks to Duncan and Sam, and shout out to the sponsors. .com. You should have accounts by now. If you don't, go make one. .com/RLS. Currently, if you can deposit up to $100 and they'll match that deposit for placing bets on their site, and it's a safe, ethical environment. They actually pay out. Unlike some more nefarious sites in the space. If you want to get a VPN as well, I recommend you use our partner NordVPN. Go to nordvpn.com/RLS. 70% discount. Protect yourself before you wrecked yourself. On the internet, that is. And obviously, shout out to the patrons that brought the podcast back from the dead. $100 patrons: Jerckysminion, Kashanath, Sean Gares. Yes, that's the Sean Gares. All the celebrities around here. Flacksmith, AliceTheAlchemist, Marcus Kiumpar, Detlef Insomniac, and our $50 patrons: J Dubs, Quasar Fox, Tobias Bernasconi, Butt Pounder 420, Watch Dodge. Yeah, I knew Monty was going to laugh there. He's a long-standing patron, all Butt Pounder.
Beast 420 is my favorite esports fan of all time from back in the GSL days. So I respect it.
Shout out Reykjavikonsteam, Watch Doge, Zinged, Benakagi, Sard Sawar, Sigo, Smart as Superman, GamingPoleDK, Alon, Daniel Magnuson, Echo, RezChi, Miss Alcoholic, and Cathal. That was by the numbers. Until the next episode, make sure you all take care of yourselves. Peace.